Okay, we're recording. We're live.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this podcast. We are here to deconstruct the end of Season 8. We have a mixture of veteran fans as well as people who have watched parts and pieces of the series, as well as newer fans as well. Joining us today will be these people discussing.
I'm Lauren. Hi.
You want to say anything about
yourself
and also yourself as a fan?
Yeah, maybe like your involvement with the show personally.
Oh, there's a cat. I am Lo Bennett Draws, or L Bennett Draws on Twitter. I go by Lo. I am a longtime Voltron fan, and I've watched season 8 for the second time with this lovely group of people here.
Yeah. And I'm Anko, or Anne, and I'm also a longtime fan of Voltron. For Legendary Defender, I think Lo and I both watched, and Ash too. Mm-hmm. Maybe all of us, pretty much. Most of us have watched it since season 1 came out. So we've been following it in real time and following the fandom in real time and everything else. And a little bit of the original series when I was wee. Not a fan at that time, but I was familiar with it.
Oh, I watched it all the time. It was my favorite.
And myself and most of us are creators in one way or another. So we're coming at this critique of season 8 with the mindset of creators. And I'm a queer creator.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
Yep. Actually, everybody discussing.
Yes.
I didn't want to label anyone else, but I myself am demisexual, pan-romantic, and I am a shipper, so I am coming at it through that lens, but trying not to lay too heavily on shipping for this. But yeah, that's me.
Yep, same here.
My name is Griffin. I've been a fan of the current series, not so much the old one. I jumped on it around season 4. I do actually have a secret ship, but I haven't. I'm non-biased.
Are you going to reveal it?
Oh, maybe the end of this
sure.
podcast.
Well, I have an OTF. I true friend forever, Hunk and Pidge. Yeah, I failed starting a fan art, if that counts as creative.
It does.
What? All the stuff I didn't know about.
Are you kidding? I told you, I'm restarting that piece again.
Finish it.
Well, it was Halloween fan art.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah, so I have enjoyed the show up until its very confusing conclusion.
I am Ashton. I've been watching it again, like with everyone else. When the show started, I didn't even know Voltron was a thing, and then I'm like, oh, it's a thing, and then I was like, this shit's good, and so till the end, and I was like, I should write. I don't create anything. I just like to be a funny person.
You fucking create shit.
You're a liar, you're a gamer, and you're an artist, but that's okay.
I probably shouldn't curse.
Your pencil has not touched paper in the name of Voltron, and that's okay.
Oh, yeah. It's already happened, so.
Yeah. Oh, has it?
Not with you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, did I curse?
So, hey, everybody,
It's
my
probably
name is
me.
Kay. That would be KSS Starbuck at Twitter. I am also a queer creator. I am the person who's here for the lulls. I started season 1, watched a little into season 2, and then came back at season 8 because Twitter was exploding. So I am here to provide counterpoints and questions to my deeper fans and have some fun discussing the show.
Yeah, nice.
Wow.
Okay, so
Sounds like we have a solid crew. I didn't even realize.
Little column A, little column B, little column C.
Yeah. So I guess maybe start out with our
Jeannie's here
feelings
too.
going into season 8
just
before
like
we watched it.
Big seasons? Oh, before we watched it.
Like what maybe our expectations or hopes were, how we were feeling about Voltron, because I know there were some fans that were not happy with season 7 and were already feeling like the show was failing them, and then others fans that were super pumped for the ending. So what were people's thoughts before we watched it, if any?
I was just ready for it to end.
Wow.
You get to the point where you're like,
God.
just please.
I had seen season 7 and was disappointed in a lot of... I mean, it was an okay season. I was just disappointed in a lot of the ways they had treated certain characters. And so I went into it cautiously optimistic, but not expecting much, especially considering the leaks that were roaming around on the internet at that time. A lot of people in the Voltron fandom that are diehard Voltron fans know that there were screen cap leaks that had. Well, I was surprised that they were true. So I guess
were they 100% true?
They were
I didn't
100%
actually
true.
see them.
Mhm.
Wasn't it a different person?
Yeah, it was freaking Homeboy from Macross marrying Shiro.
Roy Fokker.
Yeah, it was him marrying Shiro, but then I think they got feedback from people on the internet, and they were like, "Oh, we probably shouldn't marry him to this random dude. We should probably try to stick some guy in there for Shiro to marry."
Somebody who's still random, though.
Yes, completely.
Because the
random.
Roy
Still feels
Fokker guy
random.
was in Voltron earlier.
He was in
like one scene when Hunk or
Yes.
somebody was
for
like
0.2 seconds.
yeah,
though.
peeking in
to
to a room or something, and he
Yeah.
was sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
I only know this because I'm a Robotech fan. I was like, it's Roy Fokker! And he had nothing to do with the show at all after
Yeah,
that.
and I was like, "Oh, 80s anime dude. I don't know who the hell you are. You're not important to anybody, but I guess you're getting married to Shiro. That's okay.
Okay.
Cool."
I went in excited, actually. Like, there were some disappointing things with season 7, but I liked the tone of it overall, and I kind of liked the direction the show was moving in. And we'd brought a lot of things to conclusion, but we were opening more questions. And I was like, cool, we're going to get the season where we answer everything, and it's going to be a cool finale. And I'm hopeful for... I think I wrote on Twitter the things I was hopeful for, and it was like, I'm hopeful for Shiro's backstory at last. I'm hopeful to see our Prince Lotor maybe make a return. I got that.
He
Was in the
a brain
season.
ghost.
Yeah.
Well, he was there though. Like I got
Yeah.
to see him. Even
There was
right.
technically a living Lotor that showed up.
Yeah,
One time.
sort of.
Sweet Babu.
Mhm.
And yeah, there were a few other small things. Where I'm just excited for like bigger, badder robots fighting, which I got that. So a lot of the stuff I was excited for, I did get. But yeah, I was really excited going in and really pumped about it. So I was starting on a high when I went in.
Mostly I was just excited to watch it with you.
Yeah.
That was my main thing. I was like, I
Got
want to watch it with Anne.
together. Okay.
With my expectations on the topic of bigger robots, I will say that 7 seasons, coming from like a male content consumer, 7 seasons of robot fighting is very wearisome. that is a lot of robot fighting. But I did actually, yeah. But they kind of pulled out all the stops with some of the like action set pieces, the pyramid setup that. I should be talking about what I was excited for, but yeah, big robots. Was kind of expecting more robot fights, and I'm really pleased that they were good. Was definitely looking before I got spoiled on season 8. I was definitely in a similar position where I was cautiously hopeful. After getting spoiled, though, I just kind of sat around because my friends were here. I knew it was going to be a little bit of a garbage fire in some areas, but I was still ready for the good parts that were going to show up. So
Right.
I showed up on purpose, even knowing what was going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the last 2 seasons I kind of watched rapid fire after each other. Because I kind of fall off the earth sometimes, so it's just I finally caught up on everything, and then the whole 7th season I was like, oh, they're not doing this. Oh, they're not doing this. And then, I mean, shit, man, the robots merged together to make big robots. Fuck. But like, I don't know. I mean, I didn't really have any expectations other than like, just want to see the story come to a conclusion, which it did, kind of. It took its time and a really weird way to get there. So, I mean, I was just more of like, all right, more show.
I came into it in kind of a twofold purpose. On the one hand, I've been exposed to the show via my friends, And there's been a lot of interesting discussions about representation, about storycraft. Like, shipping's unavoidable. It just is something that happens. But I was curious to see kind of how these character arcs would resolve themselves toward the end. And so certainly there's a social component. I wanted to enjoy this with my friends. As a story writer, I have some things to say later on as we discuss, because I have questions. I have questions and thoughts, but going in, I was expecting something interesting. I knew just from glancing at the social media reaction to things that apparently something really poor had happened in terms of
Good choice of word.
the end. It had been something that was not resonant nor successful, so I was curious to see what had happened, and that's kind of where I was coming to.
Okay. So we didn't really discuss exactly how we wanted to do this, but we all just finished watching season 8, and I was taking a few notes, just little things that I liked or didn't like about each episode. So if you guys are cool with it, we could just kind of go through episode to episode, and then when we're done, kind of an overall thoughts or anything that wasn't included within talking about episode to episode stuff that we just want to talk about overall with how the story was handled and how we felt and what we liked and didn't like. So
if we're doing all 13, do you want to do it more conversationally than like turn taking, or?
Yeah, I think it's fine to just do freeform. Whoever has something to say, just say it. That's cool with me. So
There's going to be a point at which all 5 of us are like,
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
so
all for it, though.
spoiler alert, all caps A later on.
That's right.
come here.
Yeah, that's okay.
You probably shouldn't rub your face on it.
Oh, it's fine. I'll hold him if I need to. My cat's in here now.
All those beautiful jangles you hear as our other furry.
Oh yeah,
quiet
he watched
lion.
Voltron too, so he might pipe in.
Watch some of it.
Yeah.
He was in and out.
Yeah.
So the first episode, do we want to start with things we liked or didn't like?
Um,
For each one, and then I'll just keep it consistent.
what episode
throughout.
was it?
The first, I'm starting with episode 1.
I know, but what
I didn't
episode?
write down the names. I just said episode
Oh, no,
1.
I mean,
Like,
What happened?
oh, right.
It was Lance
God, it's all blurred
admitting
together.
his feelings to Allura was kind of the big thing
Yeah.
in that episode.
I liked it. I thought that it built up from, because obviously Lance has always had feelings for Allura. And finally, in like season 7, they began to actually, they had Allura finally reciprocate, or start to reciprocate.
Right, when Lance started to act like an adult for once.
Yeah! So,
Which
yeah.
I actually kind of liked them on screen at the same time together when he matured a little bit.
Yeah, me too. I thought, I've seen some fans critique that they felt like that came out of nowhere, that romance between the two of them, and I personally didn't feel that way. I felt like,
no, he's liked her from the beginning.
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
on his side of things, he's liked her from the beginning, and she rejected him, but it felt like, from a writer's standpoint, it was a setup from the very first moment that they meet, where the first thing he does is hit on her. That's their first interaction,
Yeah.
is him being like, hey, pretty lady, you just fell into my arms. And her being like, your ears are hideous. And that, like, setting up this weird dynamic, like, this fun dynamic,
He
really.
didn't activate her
Between
particle
them.
barrier at all.
Right?
I actually really appreciate that none of her feelings like reciprocated towards him until he matured, though.
Yeah, I felt
Yeah.
like that, kind of showed both of their story arcs, but, his especially, in that I need to mature. I'm not in a place to be in a healthy relationship with this person right now. And her also being like, I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody like you. And that showed his growth. And that also, like, showed their growth as a couple and how they could come together romantically. So
It started off almost like a joke, and then kind of came in at the end to be. Though it was like they waited till the last minute to be like, all right, like each other. We gotta kill her.
Spoilers. This is not a spoiler-free podcast.
Yeah, there's
I really
spoilers
hope
here.
our listeners are like,
I would think I'm sure if wherever I post this, I'll let people know. But
yeah.
we're talking about the entire season and the ending and all of our feelings. So this is
yeah,
all of the spoilers
Allura
all
dies.
the time.
the train does not stop at station 3. this time.
It goes all the way to station 13,
Oh, yeah.
for better or for worse.
But yeah.
I don't really have much on the first.
I guess
That's
our only
fine.
thoughts
Yeah,
on.
it was-
I mean, I technically wasn't present for episode 1, but it kind of sounds like our thoughts are just like how we feel about those two characters liking each other.
Well, that and it was just super. Like the rest of it was just kind of low grade, super chill. It wasn't like a.
It was kind
more
of a
like
fun
a
episode. They did do a throwback to the original Voltron
Yeah,
in
they
that
did.
one, which is another thing I think a lot of fans were divided on. I liked
That
it,
was kinda
even
cool.
though it was. I think, as this show tends to do with everything that's goofy, I think it went on for too long. I feel like they have a joke and it's cute, and you're like, haha, that's really cool, that's funny, that's quirky. But then, like, it only needed to be for like 5 minutes, and it's keeps coming back through the whole episode again and again and again and again, where Pidge slowly like accepts the character of playing Pidge
Yeah.
from the original Voltron and doing the wacky voice and putting on the costume.
Oh,
and it's
that's
like,
right. Yeah.
No, I was here for that episode.
Yeah, that was the first episode.
Oh,
Yeah, they all like melded together.
Oh, okay.
For me, at least. Anyway.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So I liked when it started with the intro of the original Voltron, and then it's Pidge watching it, and then they're like, Hunk's like, did you see us in the show? And like, I'm like, oh, this is really cute. And then it kept going. I'm like, okay,
Okay,
You're
stop
like,
now.
I get it. Yeah.
we can go back to the actual
Also, how
one.
the hell did they put a show together so quickly?
Well,
There's some world building questions. So many world building questions.
yeah, and all the callbacks that they did throughout this series. Oh, specifically with the MFE pilot saying, like, Dinotherms connected, Mega Thrusters are go. That was a really cool callback, too. So they did, like, really subtle stuff.
Right, which like fans would recognize, but others wouldn't.
Yeah.
Which was the best way I think to do it personally. But
So that way it's not super stark.
right,
But this episode, it was just like they had their shtick and then they stuck to it for as long as they possibly could to make an episode out of it. And it was a little grating after a
Yeah.
while.
then the other thing I said that I liked was just Hunk encouraging Lance in
Yes.
the beginning. I just thought that was really cute friendship between them. Like, just do it. Just do it, dude.
Shia LaBeouf, man.
Yeah.
Do it.
Don't let your dreams be dreams.
So I wrote down the thing that I didn't like, some things I didn't like. When Allura and Lance were alone and they were talking, Allura confiding in Lance that she feels really sad because she sees that everyone else has come home to family except her. And she's the only one that doesn't have family.
What's it,
And-
Shiro?
Yeah, and I felt like, I mean, I think that was kind of a repeating theme for the whole season, but I felt like, are we just ignoring that Shiro is a character that exists and he's a main character? Because we don't even know who his family was or is. Like, at least with Allura, we even know
What
who her,
happened?
who her family is
Yeah.
as an audience.
And as far as like he was concerned, anything that had to do with him was just that he was this super fancy guy at the garrison and then went into space and then they found him and were like, all right, now you're Voltron, let's go.
Right. Well, and we see that he had, you know, like through Keith and some of the other characters too, like he had a presence before Voltron in all of their lives, one way or another. And so he's more than just being, you know, I was the former leader of Voltron and now I'm just kind of a side character. Like, he's an important part of the team, at least up until this point. So it felt very strange to me to not even address that and to have her say, I'm the only one without a family, when like he doesn't have anybody that we see. And the only person we're seeing that he still has ties to on Earth is the person who's killed in the previous season that he's currently mourning. Like, he's in mourning still when we start this season, and that's never addressed.
Well, and just like structurally, found family is such a prevalent theme throughout this show. It's odd to me that it's leaned out of at the end season when you would think we're gonna lean into those ties that we've spent this whole time building, and we have this character who, like, from the beginning was ride or die, like, for his team, and now is just kind of floating space commander.
Yeah. And I mean, I think obviously they were still trying to push that theme with her giving that speech, because it concludes with Lance saying, well, I want to be your family.
Mhm.
And that's the point where he says, I love you. And that is showing, your family can also be found family. And the, Lance, as well as the other paladins and people around you, are your family now. And that's okay. But it just felt like Shido got the short end of the stick there. So
I think that also has to do with when he died in season 2, 3, I can't remember. When he died, he wasn't supposed to come back. He was such a popular character that they wrote him back in anyway. So I think that's what was hypothesized. That is what is commonly accepted among the fandom as what happened. So I think that they had trouble writing him back in. They had trouble expanding his backstory.
I don't know though, because I feel like the whole arc with Kudon and that kind of became a driving force of the show, and he became a pretty big player in like how Hagar at that point and the Galra are using somebody to infiltrate the team, and like he was a key piece to everything at that point. And if you took him out, it would have been a completely different show than what we were given. So I felt like he wasn't just a side note. They were like, okay, we need to add this element of him in, and that they figured out a way to do that. And I don't know, I feel like from a writer's standpoint, you could have continued that all those themes that you set up with him throughout the other seasons in season 8 and still had it flow the way that it did and hit the same plot points that they sometimes hit and sometimes missed a little bit. But like, you didn't necessarily have to just ignore that his character existed in the emotional moments the other characters shared.
Yeah.
He still could have been a part of it, and it still could have flowed.
Oh, yeah.
And it could have been as simple as a sentence of dialogue. We're not talking about majorly changing the action points of any given episode.
Yeah.
But no, I tend to agree with you. It was odd, his disconnection from the rest of the team, from the characters that I started with.
Yeah.
And let me see. I don't want to spend too much time on one episode, but the only other thing I said, another Shido thing, was when they were giving their speech. And then this time it wasn't just Shido. I think everybody kind of had a little bit of something to say, before they were going to leave Earth, to be like, yeah, we're going to do it and we're good and whatever. And we've all had loss and whatever. And Shido talks about how they've had loss. And then they show the memorial, and then they zoom in. I thought they were going to zoom in on Adam because Shido was the one talking about we've all lost people important to us. And they zoom on, I don't even remember her name, the general.
Sandy.
The one that kind of betrays them a little bit.
Right, the general that betrayed them.
General Sandy.
The one that killed Adam, basically.
Yeah.
She didn't directly kill him, but... Shido is talking, and it's... like an exact mirror of when he was talking in the previous season, and it goes to the memorial and it goes to Adam, and it's like almost the same speech, and then it goes to her.
Which is a little odd. That's an odd choice.
I'm just not sure.
I think it was because she had like reformed right before she died.
Yeah, like right after she screwed everybody over, and then was like, "What? What do you mean? We don't have a deal." And then she was like, "Well, I'm gonna be good in the end," and then died. And it was just like, that shit doesn't save you. You fucked up everything.
Yeah,
you ruined it.
I understand that she was supposed to have a redemption arc, but like, I don't know what the point of bringing her back as to talk about her. Or you show her picture, as an audience, who are we supposed to have an emotional attachment to in the show, as far as these side characters that you show us for only one episode, is a little confusing when you, again, are mirroring the same almost speech and the same memorial, and then you go to a totally different character than the first time.
That does not have the emotional ties.
Right, Adam... They didn't really build up too much emotion,
but he was part of
either.
Shiro's story.
But as far as characters go, Shido had more of an emotional tie to Adam than this person he had just met that screwed everybody over. So yeah, that was, I guess, neither here nor there, but my negative. Okay, so the second episode is when that was the episode where it was Honerva's past, and we kept going back and forth between really late in the timeline to just a little bit before we currently were in the timeline.
Oh, yeah.
And it was going back and forth to show
The Tarantino episode.
her past.
That was hard for me to follow, like Tarantino.
Yeah, so I'll stop talking so you guys can talk.
That was one of the first places where I actually started to get actively involved in what I was watching, and it made her one of the most dynamic characters as an uninvolved viewer for the entire season for me. I was like, wow, somebody has depth of intention and story, and I can clearly plot from A to B to see why this person is doing the things that they are doing. This is something that the rest of the season really suffered from, and part of that is my deficit as a viewer, missing some context, but I thought that episode was interesting. The jumping was kind of an interesting point in mirroring and like showing intention versus effect, but I liked it, actually. That was one of my favorite episodes.
On to follow Kay's point about really getting hooked, like for the first point in the season, Minerva has been an interesting character for me. I started off kind of just despising Hagar, really only liking her as a character, like, design idea.
Yeah, her
but,
and the Druids.
Yeah, but seasons like 5, 6, and 7 just kind of like slowly but surely like ramped up the stakes. I'm like, this is a character of interest. Like, pay attention to her. She has complex motives. And we're not gonna show all the cards in our hand for her yet. So maybe tune back in. And I feel like there was actual payoff for that in season 8. That was one of the more satisfying plot threads, was Minerva's plans finally coming together. I did really enjoy this episode, and I think I'd like it even more in hindsight if I could open up a video editor and piece it back together, in a little bit more fluid fashion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, pretty enjoyable.
Yeah, I didn't really have too much of a problem with the jumping back and forth between timelines. It opened up already in the past, and we didn't have any indication that we were starting in the past. And so that was a little confusing to be like, wait, we were with the good guys, now we're with the bad guys. But the bad guys are doing things that I felt like they already did. But like, it took a good 5-10 minutes before it was like, oh, okay, these are two distinct timelines that happened before everything we just saw. And so, like, jumping into it that quickly, it would have been good if it started at present time and it showed that it was, like, her reflecting on what she did or something. So we're like, oh, okay, this isn't present time.
Well, I think there were a few present time moments in there, because she does mention the Kralzara, unless I'm butchering the term.
The Kolzara or something.
Kralzara.
She mentions a Kralzara, and for a minute I think, oh, okay, that really helps give context as to when this happened. But she's actually talking about the Kralzara that they're electing to choose the post-Lotor Emperor. So I think there were one or two present moments in there.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I'm so confused about yeah. So they could have paced that better. But I did really like that episode. That was my I get to see Lotor, because it wasn't only about her past, it was also a lot about Lotor's story and how he slowly fell to corruption just through his circumstances. And that was nice to see. Like, we already knew he had a crappy childhood and he was bad because of it, and he kind of wanted to do good things, but through bad means. But it was good to see, like, him as a child, and how, like, when he was born, he was rejected by his father right away, like, take him away from me. And
that sucked.
Yeah, like, see him, because I felt like up until this point, I'm like, he's obviously a person that manipulates people. Did he ever really want to do good? Or did he just know he was doing bad, but he didn't care because he was just...
And you only ever hear about that, so it could be a lie.
Right, it's like, how much of it is him actually honestly saying, I wanted to do good, and how much is it him just saying...
Paying lip service to
I want to do good, so that people will do the things he wants them to do.
Yeah.
But no, we do see that, like, he did really try to bring peace among people, and he did really care about his father up until a certain point, and he really did want to know more about his mother and be close to her up until a certain point. So I was really excited about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really nice to see that he got some sort of redemption without actually getting a redemption arc, which is what was upsetting to me, was that he didn't get a redemption arc in the eyes of current time. He was redeemed to the audience, in a sense, but only because he became a martyr to his own cause.
Yeah. My only other thing I wrote about that episode is I was super excited when Kova appeared again.
Yes.
Because I was like, Kova's alive! And then Kova, 5 minutes later, was dead.
They're like, yes. Oh.
I'm pretty sure
killed
Minerva
the cat.
uses no less than 3 animals as alchemical reagents throughout the season.
Yeah.
One of them being a freaking guardian of a realm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I did write that I didn't quite understand how her sacrificing Kova let her see Lotor's being in the secret Altean planet and all of his plans and stuff. Because before this, we see her suck the quintessence out of a general or a captain or somebody that was out there looking for Lotor, and she got all the information about what he knew from his mind before he died. But Kova shouldn't have known a lot of the things that she saw, because last we saw Kova was stuck floating on a dead planet, basically.
Right.
So Kova wasn't with Lotor anymore. I don't know. It was a little confusing to me. Was this supposed to be stuff way from the past where Kova was still traveling with Lotor? Yeah. But she somehow finds out that her son... I don't know. It was very confusing to me as how she was really using Kova, and that wasn't explained very well, I thought.
I think mostly we were all just yelling about the fact that Kova got used up as...
Yeah, I'm sad.
Yeah.
Not necessary!
And then, it almost felt like they were trying to explain that away by showing in some of the flashback clips that he was like, oh, this is my pet now. And so they were super tight, and so it's well, she could find him because they were super close. But
Yeah.
That was my assumption.
Yeah, but again, if Kova wasn't there, then you wouldn't have been able to just be oh, well, because you were cool friends with him, now I know everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they were supposed to still have some sort of link or not, but I mean, the first time we see Kova has a link with Nardi, and Lotor doesn't seem to care about Kova. And in fact, Lotor kills Nardi and then just abandons Kova to die, basically.
Yeah.
So at that point, it's I don't know if Kova still cares about Lotor, but Lotor obviously doesn't give a crap about this cat, because it's just goodbye.
Yeah, actually mentioning that again after seeing him as a kid grow attached to Kova was a little silly.
I mean, it was cute, but it was just confusing as a viewer.
Yeah.
To understand, what their relationship was supposed to be, what I was supposed to be getting from it. Any other comments before we go to episode 3?
I think, so for me, during the child Lotor flashback, when he said, he was this cat's mine now, I think for me that was a reflection of him wanting some control and him finally finding possession.
Oh, sure.
In his own life.
He does mirror the exact tone and phrasing that Zarkon uses to him moments before.
Yeah, and then immediately after he's you're a witch and I'm the prince and I command you. He was able to find, that was a gateway for him being in control of something.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah.
So I don't know if he actually cared about the cat. I think that the cat was a way of him saying, this is what I have staked claim to. This is my cat.
What are you going to do about it, witch?
Yeah. Well, now, witch?
Yeah, I would agree. And also showing what their relationship was, that it started as, when he was a young child, he was still trying to please everybody around him, his father, and probably the witch and anyone else that he kind of looked up to. And that as he got older, it's no, yeah, he's mimicking his father, basically. Well, my father looks down on me. I don't have any power, so I'm going to look down on these other people. Yeah, it was an interesting
Oh, and one
narrative.
tiny little note. I really liked seeing the caretaker again. After meeting her as a little lady.
She's so cool.
Yeah. Like literally no plot relevance, but like cool character.
Episode 3, I didn't really write anything, so I don't remember what it was about.
Whoops.
I mean, I wrote.
Well, what happens in 4 then? Because that'll probably jog our memories.
What was
Like-
episode 3?
I could bring up like plots
yeah, you sure can.
synopses for the whole season.
But I just said I disliked that I didn't really understand what Voltron's plan was or what everyone was doing.
That kind of sums up all of season 8 for me.
So
but...
that was a point where they were going and doing something, and I didn't understand. A lot of times they were just like, okay, everybody, we know what the plan is. Let's go do it. And I'm like, but you didn't tell us what the plan was. Or you said it so quickly that I don't really understand how it's being implemented. They're just like, you're going to attack this person. You're going to attack this person. I'm like, well, why are we attacking these people? What is our goal here?
Why? Why are we doing this?
Are you just trying to destroy people? Are you trying to take something out to further, like, what is the ultimate plan? So, yeah, I just wrote that I didn't really understand what was happening, why they were doing what they were doing. And then I guess Allura said something about there were other ways to get what they needed than using force. And I wrote down that I liked that she said that because I felt like that would have been a good narrative to continue using. And I feel
I think the Galruk commander warlord's name is Lalav or something. She's trying to get
it was that one.
Right.
When we started with the point of view of the Galra that were getting attacked.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Because it started right in the heat of battle, and I was like, what is happening? Why?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's implied that it's part of the Coalition's efforts to relieve the remainder of the Galra Empire.
Right.
Because they do still think that they have galactic control. They do still vie against each other for power, so... but they never say, like... They never give us an establishing, like, okay, we're on a mission. We're going to attack this base and liberate this planet. That would have been like a one-sentence intro that would have, like, probably made things make a lot more sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think that was just a fighting people episode. But yeah, I said that, yeah, Allura said there are other ways to get things than using force, which I thought was interesting because I feel like later on in the season that becomes hypocritical for her.
This was also the one that had the kind of weird monster that Keith and Allura had set free.
Yeah, the Galra Muncher.
And it was a very tonally different episode for me to watch as an outside observer because there's kind of an idea of unity and like team building and like the thought that we will overcome as a group. And I was getting some Dead Space vibes in that episode, as much as Y7 television will do. It was a little different. Mm.
Yeah, I don't think I had any big issues with it other than just I didn't really clearly understand what the objective was of that mission.
Well, and then you had the creature that came in and was like fucking shit up and then left. And then it was like, well, that was quick.
There wasn't a major multi-episode setup for that creature, but they did kind of make it seem like it was going to be a bigger deal in later seasons. And it was really only in one episode for season 8.
Right. I mean, at least they brought it back.
Yeah, at least they mentioned it.
Yeah.
At least it was on screen.
Yeah, I just felt, I guess, the setup and the pacing is all I could really say. It could have been done a little better, but I don't have any big, gaping, oh my gosh, why'd they do that moment from that episode.
One just kind of structural argument that I have about the season in general is that the pacing was very erratic in, like, as a totality. I did not get a sense of forward movement or of, like, continuous plot. A lot of what was happening probably should have been established in seasons prior so that we had a clear idea of some of these characters' motivations and reasons for doing what they're doing. And then spent most of this season doing it and showing it clearly.
You felt like there were still a lot of moments for, like, unnecessary lengthy explanations for setup?
Well, and just if you are at the end of a multi-act play, you are learning everything you need to know between the end of part 1, in the middle kinda. Act 3 is just about the climax and then eventually coming to the world outside of whatever this conflict that the story has introduced to us is.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be a happy or a sad or a neutral one. It may be a gray ending, whatever it is. But generally speaking, and not everything is the same, but generally speaking, the end of a long multi-chaptered story is devoted to resolving the conflicts that have happened within the story, and we generally, by that point, know what has caused them. The fact that we were learning motivations at the real end of the game didn't work for me as a viewer. I'm not saying that they're completely, like, it's wrong to do so, but I didn't think it was clear or clean writing.
How long have we been recording before the word writing finally came out of one of us?
I didn't look at what time we started. Yeah, I think they did do the setup and they had a lot of that there. They just didn't go along with some of the things they already had. They kind of started steering things in another direction at the last minute a little bit, and it disrupted it. I don't know. I felt like their pacing wasn't very strong for the first 2 seasons, and then I felt like season 3 they kind of found how to pace things. Mostly they've always had some issues with the joke episodes and stuff, but yeah, I don't know. It felt like they were taking a step back with the season.
Yeah,
with a lot of things.
Well, up to season 7, they like the characters were the driving force, and then all of a sudden characters' relationships like were non-existent, or they changed very suddenly without any implication as to what happened.
Yeah, they had all the setup there. They just didn't use the setup they had. They changed how they were telling their story
for whatever reason.
Yeah. Okay, so episode 4, I actually didn't write down anything that I disliked.
That was the Okarian episode.
Yeah, that's when they went to the planet.
Yeah.
Solid
filler, man.
That was, it was already dead.
That episode?
Yep.
Battle Scars? That was episode 69.
Nice.
Yeah, but that was where
How bored you looked when you said that.
Nice. But yeah, Pidge was getting like past vision of what was happening, and through that was able to get information they could use later. So
I like that episode. It was structured.
Yeah,
and
it was cool.
It highlighted one of Pidge's talents, and
it was a callback also to like where Pidge learned to be a paladin and to use, like their connection with the earth and plants and life. And I did write there was the scene because they land on the planet and it's dead, and I liked the setup of them having Pidge walk up to like a dead vine and touch it and have it just disappear. Because that's where Pidge learned to create vines, which was what helped them defeat the enemy that came there at that time, like learned how to make life. And then we see through Pidge it coming to an end, and this is now turned to death. And I thought that was really cool visually and narratively to have it be Pidge touching something that gets destroyed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So I think they did everything right in that episode.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a very strong episode. It made internal sense as well.
Yeah, I don't remember having an issue. Don't have anything like brilliant to say about the positives, but I mean, few negatives is very good.
Yeah.
All right, episode 5, Aksha, the Grudge.
Yeah, episode 5. I think you'll have a lot to say on this one. I know you and I will both.
do.
Yeah, episode 5 was...
Boy, do I.
Shit.
Yeah, a lot happened in episode 5, and a lot didn't happen in episode 5. But the thing that I liked was Aksha being awkward and like with everybody else.
Oh, in the cafeteria?
Yeah. Just any time when they were like trying to be her friend and trying to include her. And then she was just too real about everything. And it got awkward real fast and nobody knew what to say. And that was adorable. And like we got to see those interactions with them and some more character development with other characters. And
Yeah. Like they started to establish a relationship between Aksha and Veronica. Like a friendship. So that was really cool to see more of Veronica's character. But I also feel like it was cut short.
I really like that nobody in Lance's family can mind their own business.
Yes. McLeans have their noses in everybody else's business.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go
for it.
Homeboy has a speaking role.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our dude Curtis.
Hey, our guy. The Curtis count starts here.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny
Count
because
is at 1.
yeah, I was rewatching season 7 with Ash, and now that I knew who Curtis as a character was, I started pointing him out every single time. I was
There he
like,
is.
dude, look at that dude. See that dude? He's important to nothing, but he's important anyway.
What was great was you were just like, he's super important. So I'm like waiting.
What is he gonna do?
I'm like, this guy is gonna save the earth. Look at him go. I feel like he's gonna do something.
You're gonna do great things.
He just gets to marry the hot guy.
What
That's
he
not
does
fair.
is
What
he
happened?
marries
He
that
gets to be
sweet
real
piece of
proficient.
ass.
Yeah.
He's really good on the bridge of the alley.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
That's important.
yes, so I'm glad that they actually gave him speaking roles, but he also was not a developed character.
No.
Yeah, no. I could not tell you anything
Was there-
about Curtis other than that he is a soldier,
He
the
seems-
color of his hair, and he talks to his fellow soldiers.
Yeah. He engages in communication.
Is the phrase "he seems friendly" descriptive enough?
Yeah.
Sure.
He
What do
seems
you
friendly.
base the
That's a
friendliness on?
Him getting along with people while stretching in one scene. I'm looking blankly
He was-
into the distance.
He was in the same room as a dog.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was the stretching scene, though. So
Yes.
that's
Same
Oh,
nothing to be
scene.
done with it.
That's right.
Oh, no.
That was the
everything
stretching
we
scene.
know about it is just from one scene.
Oh,
He
yeah,
likes
and
to
he was
stretch
like-
near dogs.
He was like, "Was it the dog?" And his commanding officer's like, "No, it wasn't the dog."
It's almost like it was like they're like, oh shit, we're gonna have him marry Shira. We gotta put him in more stuff. Make him stretching over there.
Because one thing, I mean, this is like an overarching issue that I have with the entire season, is that in several interviews, the creators of the show have been cited in saying that if any characters are going to get romantically involved with other characters, they will also have their own story. The characters that they're getting involved with will have their own
Well,
stories.
that they wouldn't put it in as a last minute thought and make it meaningless.
Right. That's the main issue that I have. Because, like, if they.
Because it's not a romance story. So
Right.
we wouldn't just frivolously throw romance in there.
And yet they did. And yet here we are.
And yet, here we are.
Yes. Like, if they had developed Curtis even a tiny bit
Well, here's
more.
the thing: is where did we find out his name was Curtis?
The subtitles.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's
Are you serious?
Yeah, because I'm like, I
Maybe
don't
we
think
should
I've
wait till we talk
ever.
about the end. Well, you might forget, so go ahead and say it now. I know what you're going to say.
oh,
The audio.
right. Maybe I should wait until the end. But I just want to tell you guys anyway. So at the very end, when Shiro and Curtis get married, so there's hard of hearing,
Closed caption
closed
subtitles.
caption
Yeah.
subtitles, and the
Not the subtitles,
no,
but
not the
audio.
audio subtitles. So hard of seeing. I'm sorry.
Like a narrator.
Right. A narrator says that Curtis is Adam.
Yeah, it's like
Calls
telling
him-
you what happens. It's dictating the scene, and
It's
it's
like-
like Shiro embraces
Adam and they kiss.
Adam as they get married and they kiss.
Okay, Ghostly.
So Adam clearly came back to life, Pet Cemetery style.
Or like he searched the entire garrison for someone also named Adam.
Zombie boy.
He's like, someone around here has to also be named Adam that I can marry at the end of the season.
Yeah, so there's like the joke going around that like Shido's husband Adam scratched out Roy, scratched out Curtis.
Yeah.
So,
So staying on the theme of Shido for that episode,
mm-hmm.
yeah. So Keith is held hostage
Yep.
in that episode.
And and in that scene, fucking Shiro, like, he's like, I have a gun, and I'm just gonna stand here in Pikachu face while the person who I'm supposed to be the closest to is being held by Zethrid and is about to die. And Aksha's there, and I have a clear shot, but I don't take it. I stand there and I go,
yeah, and I think he says
Not
like
my friend.
no, or so like I think he says one word, and then Zethrid talks. he doesn't speak at all after that.
Yeah.
It's only him standing there. He just why was he even there? There was no reason for Shiro
You
to be
literally
there.
could have substituted any of the other soldiers on the ship.
Or just not had him
Or
there.
not had him there at all.
He didn't do anything.
Or, even better, another narrative between Shiro and Keith is that Keith is always saving Shiro. This was the point at which Shiro could have saved Keith.
Which is what I thought it was going to be.
Which is what same.
Yeah.
I was like, it's finally happened.
See, that's just one of many points where the whole season when they were like, do something. Do something. And everyone's like, oh no! And you're just like, do something.
What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Well, you see, you have an anti-gravity Rayman arm that can, like, shoot people, and yet you're holding a gun in it?
Yeah,
Okay.
we wonder.
Listen.
There's a lot about Shiro that was really confusing to me watching. Like, there was a big character progression and it didn't really make sense based on the story that I had started with.
Mm-hmm.
And especially there had been kind of this really strong narrative of, like, regardless of whether you ship this pairing or not, like, Shiro and Keith literally cross universes for each other. Either be that as found family or lovers. I don't care. I have no stake in that race. But it seems like bad and sloppy writing to me to take a bond that's strong and then disregard it entirely without addressing it. If they had a fight, say so.
Yeah, they should have said something. Is their PTSD affecting each other to the point that they cannot be friends anymore?
Cool, fine.
Fucking
Like,
say
give
so.
us 30 seconds of scene to address that.
Yeah.
But it just seems very strange to me that these characters who previously, like, had a very strong bond with one another don't. Like, visibly from an outsider. It, like, had I not known that they liked each other watching this season versus the first season, I would just be like, yep, they're crewmates. Doop, 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 doop. They have no real stake in each other's lives. Yep. That doesn't make sense.
Co-pilots.
Oh my god, were they co-pilots?
Yeah,
They
I
were
think
drift compatible.
I think after we talk
They were
about all the
roommates.
episodes, we might
They were
we might go
roommates.
back and I have some thoughts on possible reasons as to why that played out the way that it did.
I have some thoughts on that too. I don't wanna derail too.
But yeah,
hard.
it's hard because I am a shipper of Sheath, and so I do see them. I like to think of them as being interested in each other to the point of, whether it's romantic or not, I will go to the ends of the earth for you. And so sometimes I'm like, am I just looking through this through my shipping lens? Am I too deep in it? Am I really seeing it? But yeah, I did want to see Shiro save Keith, and that was our opportunity for it, and it didn't happen, and it felt really
Weird.
disconnected and emotionless to me. It felt very empty.
From emotional standpoint, it kind of feels like we got gypped on something that had been set up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, it was all there, and then it kind of turned to Zethrid's emotions instead, which is okay. We could have had both.
Yeah, because that was another
Yeah.
that was another plot thread that had been previously set up. At least something was getting followed through on.
Right. But yeah, I just didn't understand it, and it left me feeling like, okay, I don't really care about this anymore. Like, the emotional buildup was there, and there was no payoff to me. Yeah.
Another note on that episode from more of a technical standpoint.
Mm.
I really like the look of the show. It has really good colors. It's got pretty good lighting effects in a lot of scenes. But for me, the animation is never really too stunning. It's very acceptable,
Yeah.
but never
Mhm.
it's never bonus. The scene where Zethrid is taking Keith hostage with the lighting coming up from, I believe it's
yeah.
lava beneath, the fluid motion of especially her cape, her cloak. That scene was really well animated. I just kind of had to drop that opinion there.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Anytime you guys want to talk about the animation, please. We don't have to just complain about the things we didn't like. Yeah, are we good to go on to the next episode?
Yeah. Chada. Chada. That's fucking dead.
Okay, so the next episode was Genesis.
Mhm.
Is this where we went off into, like, Lala Headland? I don't know.
Not quite.
No.
This is... So, the big thing I wrote in caps that I really liked, Lotor comes back, and then I put in parentheses, but no, sad face. So this is the one where Lotor's mech comes back
Oh yeah.
when they're fighting. That was this episode. We were like, oh my gosh, it's Lotor, maybe, and then you guys were all like, nope, nope, something's wrong here. And then eventually one of the Alteans is like, this feels wrong, or like something. Yeah, that was this episode.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, if he was good and well in there, they'd have showed his face by now.
Yeah.
And he'd be gloating.
So this is like where they finally found Honerva, caught up to her, and the fighting is starting. This is like the start.
Mm-hmm. Like the beginning.
The beginning of the end.
Yeah.
Beginning of the end of the beginning of the ending of the beginning.
Yeah. Everyone just goes quiet, like, okay, nothing to
Just
say about
radio
that.
silence.
The white lion exploded. Like, that's all I can give you. Like,
Yeah.
rip, buddy.
I think that happens
Stop
in
using
another...
cats as alchemical reagents, please.
I know, right?
Yes.
Oh yeah, that happens in a later episode. The Guardian gets killed.
Oh, no, that is this episode.
Oh,
I'm
never
looking at my
mind.
notes. I'm like, was that this one? Yeah.
Yeah, they don't spend a whole lot of time in Orion.
Yeah, I wrote things I didn't like. It seemed unclear on how they knew what Honerva's objective was, and so what they needed to do to stop her. Like, they find her and they're automatically like, oh, this is what she's doing, so we need to do this.
Yeah.
We had a big case of, like, not clearly telegraphing for the audience what the heck is going on.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, some of it can be inferred, but some of the leaps in logic really do not make sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, they know a lot without anything sparking it. They're just automatically like, oh no, she's doing this. Oh no, she's doing this. And also a lot of just doing the oh no and nobody does anything. Like, she's just sitting here, all this power's like shooting off in a bunch of directions. Everyone's just sitting there going, oh no. Just like, do something. Anything. Even if it's worthless, just do something.
Meanwhile, Keith is like, I'll tell them to attack soon.
Yeah.
Pretty soon.
Yeah, my first time watching this season, there was a lot of... I felt like a lot of them being like, oh, you know what they're doing, and you know what that means, and me going, I don't know what they're doing or what that means.
Yeah.
What do
Tell
you
me.
mean?
Yeah, and like, I felt like they kind of were just assuming that because this show is geared at a younger audience, that you were just like, I don't understand what's going on, and I'm naive, and I'm just going to accept the fact that I don't get it, and that whatever is being presented to me, I'm just taking as fact.
Like, many of the people talking to you right now have degrees, multiple. So, if we can't figure it out, you have failed communicating.
Right, but I feel like that's what they were counting on. Like, you know, that you will just take it at face value, and that's poor writing.
Yeah, it is.
Like, you shouldn't just count on your audience being comfortable with being ignorant, because there is, like, sometimes there's stuff where, like, this doesn't make sense, and I know it doesn't make sense, but within your world, you're like, this is how it works in my world. I know it doesn't make sense, don't question it, this is just what it is. But you at least explain what it is, and here they don't even do that.
It's inconsistent with other setups in the show and
Yeah.
other actions in the show.
It doesn't follow internal consistency at all.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, the Guardian was destroyed, and that's one of these things where I'm like, narratively, I think it's okay to destroy the Guardian,
Sure.
but the way that it was executed was very quick, very messy.
It took like 2 seconds, literally. Like,
Yeah, and no,
Done.
I
and
didn't even know why the Guardian was there.
yeah, well, and then like I was mentioning earlier, no resistance. It was just Laura going, "Oh, she's killing the guy," and everyone was just like, "No!"
How can we keep her from killing the guy?
Yeah.
We're in a giant robot. We don't
Yeah.
know what to do.
Maybe if the robot was equipped with a giant cannon and they had a sharpshooter on board.
weird. I don't
Weird.
know.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
Who's that?
it was interesting because, you know, where they are is only supposed to be a place that, like, chosen Alteans can go to. And we see that because, like, Allura and Lotor are the only two people we've seen go there so far, and nobody else could enter
Right.
that area. And even then, like, they didn't know that Lotor had like, that's the first time we see, oh, Lotor has the markings. Like, we know he's Altean, but we don't realize how Altean. That's his new race.
Yeah,
It's just
Like-
all people who like Lotor are
It's like a
Loteans.
Scotty
That's
Poo or
me.
like a Labradoodle. It's Loteans.
but like it was a really big thing the first time we go there, and like the Guardian is a big thing, and then here I was just kind of like, well, I guess like he has it so his mom could have it too. That kind of makes sense, but then all the other people that are with her also go into there, and does the lion judge all of them? What is he doing? Like, he comes out only when Voltron is there, or are they just seeing that, or did he come out because they were there? Like, it was just all done so, like, bam, 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 without any explanation. That, again, there was, like, this emotional disconnect of, like, okay, this is a thing. Like, he could just be a random energy source that was floating through that wasn't a lion, and it would make no difference to what's happening narratively right now. Whereas you could have made that way more climactic by like having him be like, oh, Voltron's here, I'm going to try to aid Voltron, and like have him trying to sacrifice his energy to them and have her like suck it away.
Oh, sure.
Or, you know, like something like that where we're more emotionally invested in it.
Yeah. Like
And
he doesn't show up for a couple seconds and then just get blasted into nothingness.
Yeah, and it wouldn't have taken that much, like from a writer's standpoint, to just do something like that. And have it make sense instead of just being this convenient thing for the end. Like they did a lot of, this is just convenient for you, so we're just going to drop it in right here and not explain why it's happening.
And on both sides, too.
Yes. So that was my big thing, I think, with that one.
All right.
I really don't have much more to contribute to that one than just like an exasperated sigh, to be honest.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think that's when we were all kind of like,
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
so
Everyone.
this is how it is. Okay.
Confusing.
Everyone hold on to your butts.
Hold on to your butt.
Getting to day 47, my favorite episode.
Favorite episode.
This was a really beautifully constructed filler episode for me. I felt emotionally connected to everybody I was looking at.
Except Shiro.
Except for Shiro,
We
who
see
is
his
a
butt
cipher.
once.
Yeah.
We see a butt shot of his once via
But
dog.
BB! We got that beautiful doggy.
But,
Like,
oh my god, but
Yeah,
Hung,
The
dog.
dog waiting patiently in the elevator shot.
Yeah.
that was kind of like the pièce de résistance for me. Like, it was pretty good. I enjoyed that
Oh,
episode
is it
quite
just
a
a
lot.
mirror? It's like, oh no,
Floating
it's
and
operating
being
an
like-
elevator.
and honestly, like Hunk being able to connect with a character over food, like he's usually the one who's like, I like food, and then everybody's like, food's okay. But to have Kincaid be like, I fucking like food. What the hell's wrong with you? I want to record him cooking. It's really cool to see somebody else like something that he likes that everybody else takes for granted.
Yeah.
Especially with having that one person who was legitimately like, oh, cooking sucks ass.
You know what? Cooking
He's like,
keeps
no,
you
it
alive,
doesn't. Yeah.
bitch.
Yeah, I don't think we really had like a Hunk Connects Overcooking episode since Rep It Sal's.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is also a really sick episode.
Yeah.
Such a fucking good
really
episode.
good. Yeah, I really liked this episode too.
All the spinning and stuff was a little
Jarring.
Yeah.
much, but yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit of a
But-
Cloverfield effect.
Yeah,
on
yeah.
Yeah, that was my one, like, not positive or negative, but just like a personal preference comment. Was I felt like when they started this episode, ooh, it's a Cloverfield. It's a nod to Cloverfield. We're doing the camera, like it starts out happy and then oh
Stuff
no,
goes
there's
wrong.
something crazy happening. And when
Yeah.
we see the crazy thing, it's a green tentacle monster. I'm like, oh, this is Cloverfield! And I was really excited about that. And then, like, they kind of slowly drifted away from that as it continued going on. And I wished it had built up more and been more suspenseful as we kept going. Like, and then kind of slowed down at the end a little bit. And it was just like, build up, and then, oh, just silly. So just, that's just a personal preference, though. Like, they
Agreed.
didn't necessarily write it bad. I was just like, oh man, I wanted to see more suspense and
More doggo cam.
Yeah.
At least the
That was a
sillies
good
were
dog.
like worth sticking around for this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it was kind of like expanding on what it was doing in the season, where it was trying to expand more on the people on the ship.
To make us feel like they're not straw
Just
dolls.
there. Yeah, exactly. Because the most of the show, you're really like strapped in with the paladins. It's not. I mean, they do have people that they'll go to flesh out a little more, but most of the time the people that you know and relate to the most are the main characters, and then like when they're kind of broadening everyone out a little bit, makes it a little less like, oh, they're there also.
Right. Well, we had 6 seasons with all the other characters. These new characters we've only met in season 7, so it's only been one season, like half a season really, with them.
I would have liked to have seen more of James Griffin and Leaf's daughter. Because it highlighted a lot of Razavi and Kincaid, but we didn't get to see any of James or Ina.
Yeah.
And I would have liked to have seen more of them because they're fascinating characters, and they're also MFE pilots, and they got screwed.
Barely even saw MFE in the last season.
Yeah, not very much.
And they were supposed to be a parallel to being like the Voltron successors.
Yeah, that got set up pretty hard in the last
no kidding.
season.
And then this season was just like, who's she?
There was a rumor that there was going to be a spinoff, and I wonder if they just realized they weren't going to get the funding for that, and they just kind of pulled away, but still kind of tried to include them a little bit. Who knows with that? That's all speculation. Yeah, I think the only thing I wrote that I disliked was that I did feel like this episode dragged on a little bit longer than necessary. If they also wanted to have the next episode be a filler episode, I thought it was unnecessary to have 2 filler episodes. So they should have either just kept this one as it was and not had the following episode, or made this one shorter because it didn't really need to be as long as it was, and have it trail into the next episode and kind of consolidate them together.
Honestly, like the way that next episode played out, I could see that being arguably more effective than what we got. Oh, especially because this next episode I got beef with, and I know you guys do too.
Yeah, there's a lot to say about the next episode.
Clear day.
I feel like, just to segue into the next episode, one of the scenes that we'll talk about in this episode could have been incorporated into the 47th day episode, and they could have cut the next episode entirely by including this one plot point into it, I feel like.
Agree.
And then they could have expanded on more characterization, but that's just me and my writing style.
So would you like to share with us what plot point you are nodding to?
Allura absorbing the Spurpies. The space herpes. So if they had just been like, oh, what's Allura doing? Let's follow her. And she was in there, and it was like, oh, this freaking space herpes. Like if they had included the entity in the video episode 2, or at least a previous episode, they could have been like, oh my god, she's absorbing it now. And then
space fungus, no!
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And you know what would have been a really fun way to have gone about that with, well, this is me still being like, they should have kept it more Cloverfield-y. But there was a point where Bebe dropped the camera and the mice picked it up and were going through their tubes, and they're connected with Allura. So they would have, if they sensed, whoa, Allura is having a dark moment right now, they would have probably run to her. And, I don't know why they would have carried the camera, but I don't know why they carried it anyway. But anyway, that would have been a good lead-in from jumping back and forth to the mice maybe trying to show other people and taking the camera with them, and then the camera getting taken away from them, and them continuously jumping back and forth. That would have been really fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, that would have made the next episode pretty much
unnecessary.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the only plot points that we get in the Clear Day episode are the entity getting extracted from Homeboy, from my dude Tavo, and Allura's like, oh shit, I want it, and then she absorbs it because
Thank you to brain ghosts.
Yeah, brain ghosts.
I like when they take the entity out of the Altean. The literal next scene is like, oh, here's an excuse to get everybody except Allura off the ship.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep. And the intercharacter is like, fucking.
Yeah, and it was just one of those. Like, there's no way nobody noticed that she was having a time with it. So to just be like, okay, here it's in this thing, don't touch it, and then everyone just leaves, and she goes, "Well, I won't touch it, but maybe I will touch it. I'm gonna touch it."
And then during the Clear Day part, I mean, I love it when Keith and Hunk interact because they have such good friend chemistry that is never touched on, except in some situations.
It always feels so natural when they talk.
Yeah.
And Keith, like, over the series, Keith like initially like pushes him away or gets defensive.
Mhm.
But like after it happens a couple times, you see it on his face like, oh, okay, he's just being supportive. I should just talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like that is one of the highlights for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just... Oh, go.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm just going to tackle one of the elephants of this episode, which is...
Oh, we're trying to avoid those.
Oh, no, we're going to talk about it. So we're going to get to the arm wrestling here, and I'm going to preface this by two thoughts, and then we can kind of talk about it. One, I understand that this is a show for children. That's fine. It doesn't deal very strongly with topics that adults would deal with in the same way that an adult would deal with it. And two, I understand that in cases of persons with PTSD, not all triggers are equal or really calculatable, but we as a group have some beef with the arm wrestling. Take it away, my friends.
How do we meet Shiro? Like, what's besides him on Earth and returning to the garrison?
I think, like, the first information that we get about Shiro after he returns to Earth is that he was a champion who was forced to fight in a ring and, like, murderize people. And he has PTSD related to that throughout the entire show.
Yeah, that's not us projecting thoughts into him. That's something we see in the series.
Yeah, and that PTSD is completely eliminated in terms of the arm wrestling episode, where he's in a ring competing, and it looks like he takes delight in it, but it's completely contradictory to how his character was written throughout the season, or throughout the show, rather.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think you did say, Katie, and it is good to note that none of us have been in combat or have experience of PTSD of that sort. So, yeah, again, saying what triggers people is different is a good thing to note. But that being said, what's the point of even setting this up? I did feel like this was a direct nod back to, he's the champion, and here we get to see him be a champion again.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially because, like, he started to take like a back seat to everything because he wasn't a paladin anymore, so it's kind of easy to be like, I mean, he's here too.
Yeah, it was very strange. Like, this is his moment to shine, and I do feel like from the writer's standpoint, it was meant to be a direct nod back to, he was the champion. The first time we see him, not exactly the first time, but within the first season, it is established that, you know, he was called the champion. He was fighting in a ring. He did win. He made sacrifices to help people that he cared about. But in doing so, he literally lost parts of himself emotionally and physically by being in this ring. And that has affected him in very dark ways. And, you know, we never call it what it is because it is a kid's show, but narratively, we see that he's dealing with that in different ways. And, you know, we see, like, Sendak is like his evil mirror, basically, of what he could have become if he let himself succumb to wanting to just thirst for power instead of trying to find himself out of all of this. And he climbs out of it and he makes his way out of it. And it just felt like a really jarring, odd nod back to that time to be like, oh, look, he's the champion. He's not Hercules. He did not label himself the champion. That was something that was thrust upon him in a negative context.
Mm-hmm.
And so for somebody to be like, hey, do you want to enter this ring? Do you want to fight a bunch of people? You know, it's arm wrestling, but it's that nod back again to that.
Yeah.
It's like, why, if we're gonna have a moment with Shiro, why can't we make it something lighthearted that isn't putting him in a traumatic situation?
Yeah.
It just felt tonally off color.
Yeah.
Why don't we have him go do fun games with
Yeah.
his friends?
Yeah, like Keith, his best friend. Keith, his best friend. But whatever. Not even like shipper goggle status. It's like, what?
Yeah, it seems like even if I didn't ship them, I would feel like from a friendship standpoint, they are best friends. They are family. They are, you know, there's nobody closer to them than each other.
I think he's only even in that room where the arm wrestling championships are taking place is because he needs to greet the diplomat that kind of guilt tripped them into visiting for Clear Day.
Mm-hmm.
And the diplomat just kind of goads him into it.
Yeah.
Like, psh, you're too old for this. And he's like,
27.
Okay,
I'm 27.
let me just roll up my sleeve and like get on it for no reason.
Roll up my arm. Just
Let me fix my arm.
Like,
I feel like a really good way they could have written that episode if they wanted to include a cute arm wrestling thing was, I actually talked to Anne about this earlier, was if it would have been Shiro and Hunk that walked in there, and the diplomat guy was like, hey, you're too old for this, haha, I bet you can't do it. And Shiro's like, I don't want to do it, but I know somebody who would be really good at it. And then Hunk gets screen time for being fucking strong.
Mm-hmm. Dude is strong.
Yeah, they don't talk about that. They don't talk about how much more physically strong Hunk is than Shiro.
Ooh, and that would have taken Hunk out of hanging out with Keith, and we would have avoided the It's a Small World knockoff, which I feel was kind of like the most boring part of the like the whole episode. Especially since that joke was really
in the corner.
Well, from the moment it comes to a stop, Keith is going to get fed up and leave.
Yeah.
And it takes your criticism about the comedy, Anne, is that like you see the joke coming and then it takes 7 minutes to play out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So like Hunk being the representative from Voltron to arm wrestle would have made tonal sense, and it would have helped avoid that scene.
Yep.
But it also reminds, like, I've lived that life of being stuck on that ride and wanting to get off of it.
I had no idea.
And it just, like, stops, and you're like,
no.
oh, no!
Oh,
Speaking of trauma.
The boat stops, but the singing doesn't.
Oh, dear.
That sucks ass.
So I will quickly just say, since we're, I think we've said all the things that we disliked about it, that I did, the things that I did like that they explored in this was the stuff with Allura. I did like that they showed, okay, she does have this power to extract the dark entities. I wish we would have explored that more going on, and that would have been a theme throughout how she kind of solved things in the end. And instead it became this path of, she's accepting this entity into herself, which is still a good narrative, but I just feel like they kind of dropped the ball on that at the end a little bit with how it played out. But I really enjoyed that. And when she has a vision, so she has a vision where she is in the Roe Beast and she's on Altea. And, her whole thing with wanting to find Honerva and, wanting to do all this, she wants to save the universe, but it's also a continuing theme with her where, she's grieving her lost planet and her lost people, and she wants to find a way, to, make up for that, I guess, or feel like that part of her life has come to a conclusion. So it shows her, the entity or whatever it is, Lotor's ghost, whatever, is showing her these visions.
Brain fungus, we don't know.
It shows her in one of the Roe Beasts on Altea and the Galra coming to attack, and her using the Roe Beast to suck up energy from the planet that she uses to defeat the Galra.
Mm-hmm.
And then she looks down and realizes she has killed the planet. And that felt like a really good warning to her. Like, you can use this energy, and you can use it for a destructive force to kill your enemies, but you're gonna pay this price.
Yeah.
And that was a really good setup, and I don't understand why they didn't fall through with that narratively later, because later they teach us as an audience that it is good to succumb to this darkness, and it is a necessary evil to use.
Yeah.
So that felt like really disjointed writing. But before we get to later parts in the season, I did like that scene, and I liked how that played out.
Yeah.
There were some jokes about Monkey Paw, because very much it felt like the fingers tilting down as you begin to accept your dark destiny.
But like narratively, that was really beautiful, and just the visuals that they used, and I liked that a lot. It's just unfortunate they didn't, go through with it. Oh, and Lance commenting when he was trying to win a lion that there's no purple lions. Voltron doesn't have a purple lion because the guy gave a kid a purple lion, and I felt that was very much him still having this competitive nature against Lotor.
Yeah.
Because it's purple.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, I want a blue lion to give to my girlfriend. She doesn't get a purple lion.
Yeah.
But then there were like 12,000 blue
Yeah, there
lions.
was a
'cause
million blue
Nobody
lions.
wanted the blue lion.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that was a cute little nod to their, romance troubles. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
All right, now we're getting into like wackadoodle time. Coming to episode 9, Knights of the Light.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have to remind me of what happens in this one.
This is where we go into like third eye chakra space.
This
Yeah.
is my like line,
go
and
through
this
the
is my
void.
dislike line.
Oh. So
That's a paragraph. That's not a line.
I remember us all doing a lot of as we
Yeah.
traveled towards Minerva's mind.
Well,
We
and
did-
then it. Oh, sorry.
Oh no!
Go ahead.
We did eventually get to a point where we knew what was happening,
Mm.
but it was still sort of a messy ride getting there.
Mm-hmm.
Especially,
And then it kept going back and forth in between of like, are we in the floaty head space or are we in actual space? Because Voltron was just floating in space, so it was like, are we in the which one? Okay.
Right. This is the episode where I felt like it wasn't really clearly stated to the audience from the get-go what exactly was happening, but Allura had the entity now, and she's like, the entity is linked to Minerva, so I can use this to find her mind.
In the
And
void.
so they're like, let's go into the void, whatever the hell the void is,
Who
and
knows?
find her that way. And somehow I'll know where she is physically by knowing where she is mentally. It didn't really make any sense.
Just another one of those magic help you find the bad guys,
Yeah.
like, or help you fight the bad guy, or we magically have this thing and this thing now.
I don't know if you guys can speak to the rest of the series, but I felt that was a little different from what I've been used to with this show. Like, going extra planar and into a non-physical space as an answer to a problem was a little weird based on everything
Yeah.
else that had happened.
They did that. They
yeah.
did that in, was it 6? Was the one where they just like
No, that is
magically flew through space?
Had like
Oh,
the toilet moment.
He's on the toilet. No, the astral
And,
plane is
on
used
an
as a
invisible
theme
bicycle.
throughout the
Astral
show.
plane.
That's what we'll call it now.
The astral plane.
The astral plane.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
But like mental links and like, yeah, different planes of existence and things. That is a theme throughout the show. But each time we see it, it's shown, I feel, a lot clearer to the audience that either like we know why it's happening, or it happens suddenly and the character comes out and the character is also confused.
Yeah, it's a little bit.
So you're meant to be confused, like, oh, something weird just happened. What was that?
Mhm.
And everyone else is confused. But this was like, we were confused, but the paladins weren't. So it's like, I'm supposed to know what's happening, but I don't.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that we were paying pretty good attention to the show. Like, I
Mhm.
don't think we missed anything major.
We were blabbing a lot, but it's because the plot is so fucking nonsensical anyway.
Yeah, well, this was our second time watching it.
It was, yeah.
So we should have gotten it more than
Yeah,
anyone
and
else.
I was just fucking confused the whole time.
I think this is the episode where I got up and walked over and started whispering to you, like,
Yeah, you're like,
hello, what's happening? Do you know, is this what happens?
and then I'm like, you know, what do I look like? Somebody who's watching the show? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it was a confusing time. I was not sure if we were in real or non-real space, where we were going, what we were doing when we got there. Not too sure. Still couldn't tell you.
Mhm.
So the few things I said I liked about this episode, I enjoyed that we got to see the original paladins again.
Yeah.
I thought it was good narratively to bring them back into the show and have them have an active role. You know, I may disagree in some ways as to how they did it and how that continued on, but I like having them there.
They did it like Shadow Link status.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, when that shadow comes up from behind Pidge, I'm like, oh, I'm getting flashback to Ocarina of Time.
Yep.
Yeah, and then it was just kind of like, and then after that they were just like, oh, we'll just come with you. We're just also here.
It's dangerous to go alone. Here, take us.
Yeah, all of us.
Was it the next episode that Zarkon comes?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's why I was like, I don't remember Zircon was here or not.
Yeah, this one just had the other paladins, and Keith, I didn't understand the first time watching it through. I got it this time now that Keith couldn't join them because Zarkon wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all able to be pulled down into that plane because they had some sort of link with the old paladins through the lions. But the Black Lions link was in another place, so Keith couldn't go with them.
It was in the moon.
No, it wasn't in the moon. It was
Well, it was in the plane where the moon was.
Right.
That, without you to explain that to me, didn't have a clue.
Well, again,
Yeah,
that was
same,
something
actually.
that I think you wouldn't get until a second viewing, because that's after everything's finished. It's like, oh, because Zarkon's coming up next.
Yeah.
And you guys didn't know that, you know?
No.
So,
I was like, he was dead.
When the original paladins are fighting them at first, they're just cloaked silhouettes.
Right.
So you don't realize the connection at first.
I said I did like that Lance got to speak with Alfor, and that Alfor and Allura got to reunite again. I thought that was touching. I thought that was a nice little thing to have. So I liked that narratively.
Yeah.
Alfor was a good character. When he died, in quotation marks, in the Haunted Ship episode, that was one of the first moments that I felt like real emotional honesty from the show. Before then, it had just been kind of like, it's fun, we're having wacky adventure action time. But like the father and daughter thing kind of, it hit me in the feels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the bull honey nut Felios.
Yep.
I cried.
That one,
Yep,
that
I
one
did
brought
too.
the tears.
There were some tears. So
So I'm glad
like,
that they had that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a good, conclusion kind of to that turmoil in her life. But that being said now, some of the things I said I didn't like, it starts with Lance and Curran telling Allura before they do all of this, I don't think you should use this dark entity. Curran directly telling her, like, this is what corrupted Honerva and led her down a dark path. I don't think we should use this because, like, this is what corrupts people. And her being like, no, we got to use this. And then after they get into wherever the hell they are, the void, and she meets her father, like, near the end, Alfor also telling her, like, there's another way. You don't have to use this entity. This is bad news bears. Like, this is not what I want my daughter to be doing. We are Altean. We are life givers.
Right.
This is something that brings death. There's another way. And her being like, oh yeah, I know. I already met the white lion and passed his test. And him just kind of being like, okay. And her being like, and that didn't work. So this is what we have to do. And being like, but
Yeah, he's too ready to accept that.
As the monkey paw just curls closer.
Yeah.
and I feel like narratively, again, this is her mirroring. She's going down the exact same path that Honerva is going down. And up until the point of this, again, this is okay. It just seemed weird because it felt like as an audience, we were still supposed to be cheering for her at this point. Like, she is making the right choice. And it was a little ambiguous. Like, am I supposed to be seeing that she's being corrupted and this is going to change at the end? Or am I supposed to be trusting that for whatever weird reason, she knows better than everybody else and it's going to be different for her than it has been for every other character that's been corrupted by this thing?
Yeah.
And if so, why is it different for her? And we're never that's never really explained, or if it is, I didn't catch it.
Nope.
It's not. No.
Yeah. So I didn't really like that, again, her father's like, I made mistakes in war, like, and because of the mistakes I made, Altea fell. And she's like, well, I understand that you have to make sacrifices and mine is different than yours. And it's like, you're not really learning from past mistakes. I feel like we aren't getting any moral lesson or any, any valuable theme is being played out here.
And not all things have to be moral per se, but just that doesn't make intra-story sense, really.
Yeah. That's all I have to say about that episode.
Fair.
Yep, didn't really miss any points I had in mind.
Yeah.
All right, so moving along.
Listeners, we hope you're having a good time. Sorry for the breaking activity.
Sorry
I
about
guess
the break there.
it's kind of the part in the season where everybody starts to slow down a little bit. And
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so the next episode is just the continuation of that. And again, the next episode is where we get to see Zarkon. So the things that I liked, I said that I liked the old paladins fighting along with the new. They were kind of like within the lions, but like we saw them together. Like they were all using the same Voltron and fighting together. And I thought that was a really cool concept. That is another thing that I wish would have continued on as we went into the finale. That felt like it was kind of not built up on as much as it could have been.
Yeah, were the original paladins only present for the time that they spent in the void in Minerva's mind, though?
There were flashbacks, but
You mean like actual, like their characters where they could go?
Yeah.
You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the very last episode when they're like, this is the only way, and then we see them kind of stepping off into the spirit realm or whatever, we see the other paladins at that point.
yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, that is accurate.
Yeah.
So, although at that point they weren't fighting, that wasn't how they solved the issue, which is good. But yeah, I don't know. Like their energy is within the lions, so it seems like that's something you could have be a reoccurring thing after that point.
I mean, Shiro stuck around in the Black Lion after he died, right?
Yes.
That would have been an excellent opportunity to have the OG paladins kind of reform their bonds then.
Right. But I do like that we, at least within a couple of scenes got to see that. I thought that was really cool narratively to have, the old paladins and the new paladins fighting together for the same cause. And like that kind of joining the timelines and everything. And like, yes, we can do this together. I said I liked the animation and the music.
Yeah, okay, but the OST for Voltron as a whole, oh my god, it's so fucking good.
It's really
Whoever
good.
the composer was Bone Appletit. Like, thanks. Thanks for this meal.
And I got most excited about Zarkon. I just wrote in all caps, Zarkon Robo, Daddy, Zarkon's too cute. Look at his face.
How do you feel about remorseful Zarkon having been yelled at by a very angry Allura?
That's in my dislike section.
Oh, interesting. I'll let us come back to it, I guess.
Yeah.
No, but I can address that. So,
okay.
No, I thought, it was good to see him remorseful, of course, but it felt like he came out of it, a little bit dazed, like what's happening. And I don't know if he remembers what he's done or not because of this quintessence poisoning.
Space Myth, not even once.
Right. But he's obviously not the same Zarkon per se that was this, horrible person that murdered, countless races of people.
No.
And had no heart.
Yeah.
He was back to what he was before all of that, when he was a good person that just made bad choices.
Yeah.
And don't do drugs, kids. He was back to that. And I thought it was really strange to have, when he was at that point, have Allura approach him and be like, you are a horrible person, and I'm going to force you to relive all the traumatic experiences you put on other people.
Yeah, it's kind of out of character almost.
It was very dark.
I wonder if it had to do with anything to do with the entity itself corrupting Allura, and that was the corruption that was reflected.
Possibly.
Possibly.
It's possible.
Well, and the funny thing is, too, is that everybody there was cool with it. Like, there wasn't one person who was like, hey, that's kind of messed up what you're doing. Like, nobody had a moral...
Everybody Pikachu face, like, just...
Yeah.
And those
they
were...
just all... It's like the same thing that, again, I was talking about earlier, where everyone just kind of stands there and goes, whoa! And nothing... And, like, nobody has any kind of say against it.
And I mean...
Even afterwards, once he was like, oh, shit, I did some bad stuff, and people were like, hey, Laura, that's a little harsh. Like, you didn't have to... Everyone was just like, that happened.
They could have even communicated it with visual storytelling, like having the background characters have upset hands, like if you didn't want to budget time for speaking. But I think I agree with everybody in that there were different ways that element and that scene could be handled.
Like, I get it. I get why they told it like that, because the things that Zarkon did
Are horrible.
but it was very clear that he was not the same Zarkon as who was genocidal. It is actually a neat parallel. I don't know. I like Transformers Prime, and Megatron had a very similar narrative in that he was corrupted by Dark Energon. But then when he lost access to it, he was like, oh fuck, I gotta go, bye. And then he just disappeared. He was like, oh, I killed a bunch of people. See you later. Like, he wasn't the same person. So that's a neat parallel that I saw anyway.
Yeah, I guess, like, narratively for Zarkon, I didn't have an issue with it. Because that did, like, we did get to see him break down and be like, you know...
Oh, man.
And be remorseful and be like, I can't believe I did these things. But he also says, like, I'm sorry, like, and he accepts that he did these things. It's not like, it wasn't me. Like, he starts to kind of do, like, well, it was the quintessence, but then he's also like, but I did all those things and I'm sorry.
Yeah. I made the decisions that led me to that point.
And I mean, and part of that is Allura also telling him, like, you can't say, like, you know, it was you. Like, you did these things. You know, you can't deny it.
Yeah.
So for him, I didn't have an issue with it. It was more for her. And I think it was, Lola, like you're saying, like, it was the dark entity influencing her. I think that is what it was meant to be, but...
It was not clearly communicated.
That and the entity's control over her mood stopped ramping up after that, it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a neat role reversal. In, like, Allura was suddenly in the darkness and Zarkon wasn't. And she was doing to him what he would have done to her.
That's a good point.
Which is like an eye for an eye type of thing, which goes completely against who she is as a person.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing for me, is that I'm fine with them doing what they did, but the way it was presented to us as an audience, yeah, again, none of the other characters seem shocked by this. There's no repercussion for her later. It doesn't come back to her. And through her doing that is what we're shown, how it is played out for us. Through her doing that is what makes him break down and become remorseful and finally, like, join the other paladins. So she is rewarded for doing that. And that's what's confusing to me. It's shown to us as an audience, you should use forceful torture against your enemies when they're this horrible. And that is what will gain you your goal, when up until now our theme has been, you know, this is what all the bad guys are using and we have to find another way. And at that point, I felt like that is the point that shattered all of that. And it's just like, no, you can do the exact same things that the bad guys are doing, but because you're the good guy, we'll forgive you for it.
Yeah.
For me, that also kind of cheapened her experiences with accepting Keith as part Galra and kind of getting over her, like, Galra racism from previously. And also when they kind of crossed realities at one point to get some of that Comet ore, they meet Alteans from another reality that had gone down the dark path that the Galrans did in our timeline. And so that was more perspective on her, like, whoa, Alteans can be just as bad as everybody else, and I should chill. Like, and take more, like, diplomatic approaches to problems, even if they set my emotions on fire. I need to be, like, patient and think my actions through. So this episode kind of took both of those character growth moments for her and watered them down a little bit for me.
Yeah, and I think it's fine if she wanted, if they wanted to show her snapping or show the dark entity doing that to her, but there needed to be that moment of her also having remorse or there being some repercussion for that. Yeah.
And then we come to Girlfriend in a Coma. That was the very end of that episode.
Allura.
Hey, Laura.
What's your status?
Laura.
Oh, yeah. Laura, are you fucking dead?
Do you call me?
Essentially, yes. Yes.
Bitch, I died.
I'm gone.
I'm gone.
This last note of something I wrote here, this was something more that Honerva was leaning into at this point, but obviously they were setting up narratively because Zarkon also does this. When Zarkon is talking about Honerva, once he's, like, awake and they're like, we have to go face her, and he's like, no, we can't, we're not strong enough. The way he talks about her was a little bit jarring for me because up until that point, we were shown that part of the reason they both went so dark was because they loved each other so much that they were like, everyone would die. Like, I would kill the universe for you.
Yeah.
And that slowly led into just, I would just kill the universe for power. But it started as this loving bond.
Mm-hmm.
And that once he snapped out of it, you know, we're kind of to assume he's back to what he was when he still just had a, you know, kind of innocent love for her before it went into too much corruption. And he realizes what she's doing now, but he calls her a psychopath in that episode. Yeah, he's like, you can't go after the psychopath, and says there's no way to defeat her and they should just give up.
Which,
And that really weakened his character. Like, it took Alfor and everyone else being like, no, Zarkon, we need you. Like, we can do this. Which, there's okay to have a little bit of that, I think. Like, he should be a little doubtful because he's just gone through this traumatic experience to be like, I don't know if I'm ready for this. But it's another thing to be like, not even call her Honerva.
Just say
Just to be
we're
like-
in the mind of a psychotic.
Yeah. We're in the mind of a psychopath.
It's messed up.
And to like totally kind of put this wedge between
And
them.
as a side note, she'd be a sociopath, not a psychopath.
anyway.
I think that also ties into the hard time that these writers had writing existing relationships, because also Keith calls Crowley. He doesn't call her mom like he did in
Yeah,
previous
previously.
seasons. Yeah. So obviously, a lot of the relationships were lost on whoever was writing these episodes.
Yeah, that was just one little note I had about. I, you know, wasn't that left a bad taste in my mouth a little bit. Okay, but we can move on if you guys are ready to move on.
Yeah.
We're getting there. All right. 11, Uncharted Regions. So we're ramping up to the end. This is really where someone who's not involved at all in the interior workings of the show, but I was just watching to see how this would end. The show was starting to feel real weird for me. Because generally speaking, when you have a multi-act story, by the time that you are at the final act, the stakes are clear, the threat is present, we have some sort of a plan, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, and we are doing it. At this point, none of these things were really present, other than, yeah, there's a crazy lady, we're not really sure what she's doing or what's going to happen or what we're going to do about it, but we got to find her. And that's where I started this episode, and I was really kind of squinting to see what's going to happen. Like, how are you going to finish this? Because I don't even know what, like, are you trying for another season? This does not feel final or like cohesive storytelling.
Yeah, but then also part of it was still we know exactly what's happening, and we're gonna go there and take care of it. Like, we know exactly where we need to go and exactly where we need to be and what we need to do, and
But they only magically know the next step in breadcrumb form. They don't like Kay mentioned, we don't have the full what is the exact threat, how do we address it. It was just, they always inexplicably know the next breadcrumb to follow on the trail.
Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of seemed to know, like, we need to go here. We need to do this. But it wasn't always clear to me, like, what is the ending motive here? Like,
The motive is to get loud things on the screen because the finale of the show is happening.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Pikachu face. Just,
I hope our audience knows what we mean when we say Pikachu
Yeah,
face.
we're kind of dating this cast by being like, yeah, Pikachu face me.
Well,
Yeah.
I
Just Google
mean,
it.
it's going to be dated by the fact that we're talking about season 8 of Voltron.
Yeah.
that's all right, though.
Disappointment like this feels timeless.
Yeah.
Disappointment is timeless.
Something I said I liked Lance. So Allura was knocked out at this point, and other people were up and about before she came back because she was so drained from everything. I liked that Lance visited Allura's bedside, and he was the one that kind of got her to come back because he was like, I need you, I love you. And I felt like that was a little bit of a throwback to Shido and Keith.
Yeah.
And I thought that was sweet. because there's a point where Shido's dying and Keith is, like,
oh yeah.
you need to come back.
He's like, you can't leave me again.
Yeah,
And then-
don't
oh
do
my
this to me again. And that's
God.
what brings Shido back. It's implied. We don't know that's
And then
what
this
brings him
season
back.
it was
but-
like, we can't be seen together, otherwise, no homo.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Except yes homo, but no homo. Sort of homo. Down low homo.
Down low homo.
But I did
Level 1
think that
homo.
was sweet. Like Lance doing that with Allura was that
Yes.
was a nice continuation of the theme.
Yeah. Thank God, because they weren't going to continue it in Shiro and Keith.
Mhm.
Whatever, anyway.
And so, and also in this one, so we know for sure that Lotor is like crispy, melty.
Oh yeah,
That's
it was
right.
so good.
You see the back view.
There was some A-grade body horror in this episode for a 7-year-old show, like for something with a Y7 rating. Some of us missed it, so we had to rewind. But it was pretty
melty.
cool to see his
Gooey,
weird,
melty, grilled cheese Lotor.
Yeah.
it was
Crypt
good.
Keeper Lotor.
Yeah, Crypt Keeper
On the
Lotor.
topic earlier from like our expectations from this season, I do remember telling Anne, like, if I don't see Lotor again, I'm going to be real disappointed. So seeing rotten Lotor was kind of a treat.
We saw a lot of Lotor.
Well, we
this
got some
season.
brain ghost Lotor too, so I mean, like he was there.
And we got living, breathing little kid Lotor.
Yeah.
Because alternate dimensions also run in the past by a good 20 or so years.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, no kidding.
I made a notation
Yeah,
about
we're
that.
coming. We're coming for that in a minute, but yeah.
But something, I did think it was interesting that, at this point, Honerva's goal is just, she wants to find the perfect line time with mostly her son. She's always like, I want to be with my son with Lotor. Like, Zarkon it's kind of
secondary.
implied that he'll be there because he's the dad, but she seems really focused on, like, I want a happy ending with where I'm raising my son and we're happy. And in this episode, we see her fuse their two robots together. And I thought it was an interesting dynamic narratively that she's using the corpse of her actual dead son, like the one that is hers in this timeline, to fuel a way to get back something she can never have. That she's literally like, and she may have been part of what caused him to drain up like that. We don't even know, but she's using him to get what she wants. So she's literally become what she loathes. And I really like that narrative.
It's the best.
And I like dark things, okay?
Yeah, no, me and Uncle, we're very big horror fans. I like a lot of the implications of that. What makes Honerva kind of an interesting character for me is that she has all these good intentions, and, like, as the saying goes, they are just paving the road to hell. Because she's effectively gone, and intentionally or not, the effects of the quintessence just have destroyed everything that she wants, and everything that she wanted to have is gone as a result of her actions. So to literally ride the corpse of everything that she loves into the finale is both metal and excellent.
Yeah. And I think that's something that not a lot of viewers probably caught on to, but yeah, that's very metal.
I
So
really like looking at it that way.
Yeah.
I know we're getting late, so I won't go too much in, but I do want to note that this is the episode where Shido gets punched. And I think Lolo might want to talk about that.
Listen.
Prepare for a breach!
Listen. Shiro is the champion. He's got a Rayman floating arm that he personally kicked the shit out of Sendak with. And yet, if there's a fucking breach on the bridge, he's like, oh, I'm going to take out a gun with my Rayman arm that can do other things. And then there's another breach, and he gets punched once. And is down for the count.
Yeah, this goes flying.
Yeah, he's like, no, and then he's like when they breach the bridge, when they go into the bridge, he's like, oh no, and then he's punched right in the goddamn face. And also going back to like Curtis, which I'm like obsessed over.
We're gonna harp on this a little
A
bit.
good
It's fair.
way, yeah, a good way that they could have introduced his character more. Like, even the tiniest bit shown that he cared for Shiro before the ending is, instead of Veronica running to Shiro's aid, it could have been Curtis.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally, again, no dialogue. Show us, don't tell us. We
Yeah.
could have seen him run over to check if he was okay.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Veronica is a character, an important character.
Oh, yeah, she could have been there too. She could have been like, yo, get out. While Shiro was fucking down. But
yeah,
also,
but it would have been way
like,
cooler to see Curtis.
Or
Yeah.
anybody else on the bridge could have also gone over and tried to stop these Altans instead of, as Ash
Yeah.
just pointed out, just
Many
stared
times.
there like Pikachu face
stand
and not
there.
done anything.
And this is like the biggest. This is like getting towards the biggest portion of it. I'm not sure if it was exactly this episode or the one after it,
It was
where
episode
she's
12.
just charging her lasers, and everyone's like, "Oh no!"
Oh, no!
And then there's that one point where the other Altean chick turned on them and shot down
Marla,
one of
or Merla.
the generators for that big pyramid thing.
Oh yeah.
And
That's right,
and then
that's
all of a
fine.
sudden after that, nobody else goes for any of the other pyramid generator things.
yeah.
I'm like, that blew it up and screwed up the whole thing. Why wouldn't you be like, oh shit, let's take down the rest of it instead of going, oh no, she's doing it.
Also, Deus Ex Balmora, like, thank you, Hunk, for showing up with the planet monsters. That was some real
Well,
big hand.
What
waving.
happened off screen was Hunk was texting with Shay
Oh.
and was like, we're gonna fucking die, frowny face. And Shay was like, I got you.
I got you, boo. Give me a
Got
sec.
you back, lol.
let me check with some friends real quick.
And then they show
Another-
up.
Yeah,
But-
no.
The Balmeras roll deep.
They do. They do, though.
God, but Shiro getting punched in the face once and then he's down. Ridiculous.
Yeah. He's an old man.
You know, like,
yeah,
when he
he's
turned 27.
27.
Yeah, 27 numbers, but
Old-timer.
in his
28,
soul,
what does that make me?
he's
I'm ancient.
God, me too.
We did have a nice Clance moment for any Clance fans out there
Yes.
in this episode where, yeah, Lance was unsure about his role and also what was going to happen to Allura, and Keith comes in and comforts him, and they're in a room alone together. So
Hey,
there you guys go.
got you guys.
Polite shout out to the Clans fans. I'm happy you guys got a scene.
Oh, they got one earlier in this.
Oh.
as
Yeah, they
well.
got the
They
sunset.
watched
Oh, yeah,
the
that's right.
sunset
Yeah.
together, and yeah, he confides in
Happy times too then.
yeah.
Yeah, they got the most out of anyone, I think, in this season. Okay, we can move on.
Okay, episode 12.
The beginning of the beginning of the beginning of the end of the end.
Yeah.
The end of the beginning of the end of the beginning of the beginning of the end.
There's a bump on the log and the hole in the bottom of the sea.
Yeah.
There's a
So
log.
we start this in media battle, and so we've torn a hole in the fabric of reality after the Balmera squad has rolled up, and everybody just stared uselessly as it happened.
Also, Andrew
Yes.
Hussey helped write this episode.
But yeah, by the way, shout out to all of my fellow Homestucks. We're all trash, just flaming garbage. But it was like watching the end of the last act all over again. Reality is splintering, lasers are exploding everywhere, and everybody's dead.
I never wanted to watch the end of the last act again ever in my lifetime.
And
Once
here we
was
were.
more than enough.
God damn.
And then this was the episode where friggin' bigger, better robot.
Yeah.
Right?
Thick Baymax
You're so
2.0 is there.
I mean, I
Ash, you did predict that.
did.
Yeah. Okay, so also, Ash has a really good time of predicting every fucking thing that happens in
Like,
this show.
good.
God damn it.
Well, and just like they're sitting there, and I'm like, oh shit, they're gonna turn him into a giant Voltron. And then they did, and I'm like, man.
And then in season 7, you were like, oh, Shiro's boyfriend's gonna die.
And then he
And
did.
they did. At least I think that was one of the things.
Yeah.
There were a couple others that you were remarkably good at predicting, but
So what are your thoughts, Miss Sam?
Do you want things I liked or things I didn't like?
Let's start with things you liked.
Okay, things I liked. I liked that before they start going through the alternate realities and stuff, and the other Alteans are still there that Minerva's talking to. she makes some comment to them about kind of like, their loyalty, is well deserved and they will see true glory and stuff like that. And I felt like that was really basically her saying Repit saw to them.
Mm-hmm.
It was really Galra feeling, which was interesting to me because she, like, her whole deal is we're going to defeat the Galra. Their way is the worst way ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this was really like you're dying for your cause.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Repit saw. Like, that is the heart of the Galra right there.
Yep.
So I really liked that, although I don't know that that's something a lot of people would probably catch. Yeah, basically just her becoming what she hates. I said the music is hella. Sendak.
Yeah, BB
Oh,
Sendak.
yeah.
Lil Sendak. Yeah, so this is the one where we get to see the good the good reality, apparently, by her standards. But Sendak, oh, he was so cute.
He's an adorable little puppy.
Yeah, and then we got to see little Lotor again. And just...
You're not my mother.
Yeah, the fact that he was like, you're not my mom, I thought was also good.
You're not my real mom.
And I thought her mech was real cool. So those were the things I liked.
For those of you who are also watching just very, very end of Evangelion and Eva rebuild on that particular mech, the way that it showed in that episode, I think there was some inspiration drawn there. I liked it. I second. It was just an interestingly designed mech.
I've only ever seen like 18 different screenshots of Evangelion, and even I saw the resemblance.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do a lot of nods to other
Congratulations.
Robo shows.
Congratulations! You did it!
You fucked shit up.
Yeah. I don't really have anything else too constructive to say because really at this point, like...
It's clusterfuck.
It's falling apart.
The plot just went on a magical journey and never came back.
I feel like that starts with the Void episode.
Yeah, like at the Void, they start to make the argument that this is not a conflict or an answer that will be found on the physical plane of existence, so it must be fought in an extra dimensional plane, or the answer is the friends that we made along the way. I don't know. The answer is the Voltron that we formed along the way, friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is all you need to take from this. The timeline and like the sense of action, the sense of why these things are happening, I will give the show that it was clear we have a mother who is grieving her own incompetence and her failures, both internal and externally placed upon her, and her attempts to make it right. And that's why these things are happening. But the answer to me doesn't really make sense. And I don't want to talk too much more. I'll let you guys kind of add thoughts if you have any.
No, I would agree that, like, Honerva's motives was probably the one thing that was the clear... Like,
it was the only thing
most
that made
clearly
sense to me.
stated in this season. Despite it being something that really only came about within the end of the last season, beginning of this one.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole narrative of Voltron. I did say, I think my biggest thing was that everything was a little too convenient
Yes.
for our
Deus Ex
heroes.
Machina.
Always that
All
way.
over the place.
It's always oh man, this is happening, and all of a sudden I have a new sword, or all of a sudden here comes everybody to VoIP us into a giant robot.
A gianter robot.
Yes.
Bigger, better robot. Harder, better, faster, stronger robot.
Yes.
But my lion just psychically told me a brand new ability I have.
Yes.
Right.
And so that's also a thing that started happening more and more often was, oh no, we're in a pickle. Here's a new gun. Or, oh, here's a new this. Here's a new this.
Or a more subtle example from like this episode was the immediate, "You're not my mother."
Yeah.
Just like right away.
Yeah. Walked up to her, was just like, wait a minute.
Yeah, and I'm sure some of that was done for pacing. They were just like, we've got a lot to fit in these last, few minutes of this. We need to go. But that, that's the reason why they didn't necessarily need to have 2 filler episodes. You know, they really should have spread the ending out a little bit more and filled us in more on what was happening. And I would have been fine with it, I think, if it was just better explained to all of us and just flowed better.
Actually, yeah, that brings up my major issue with this is, like, I know they had to rush. I know they were on the second to last episode. But what bothered me about Minerva, she's basically a genius. She has, like, a tactician's mind. She can figure out pretty much any problem put in front of her. She's very creative. She shows up in one timeline that meets her requirements for what she's looking for. And when that timeline fails her, she goes, "That's it. I'm burning down everything."
Yeah.
She doesn't go, like, because I know that I can't just take information from other media and apply that logic to this and assume that it's going to be the same. But basically everything that I've ever seen, that deals with alternate timelines, there's going to be basically infinite numbers of those. And we see later on that it doesn't really look so much infinite because we literally see the timelines.
Yeah.
Hello, Homestuck. We've come back.
There should have been like at least 1,000 more she could have just hopped to that met her requirements.
Right. I mean, I think part of that was to show us that she was beyond help, and it wouldn't have mattered if she had gone to 1 or 10 or 100.
She still would have.
What she wanted to achieve, she had already destroyed herself, and she was the one that had to fix it. She couldn't find it through just the magical, perfect reality where everything falls in place and everybody loves her. Mm-hmm. She was the one that was causing everybody to hate her, and she needed to see that. It's just unfortunate that wasn't really shown to us in a good way.
Coherent way.
I think for me it was too fast.
Oh, everything was too fast.
Yeah, especially in the last few episodes, it was just like and this and this and this and this and this and this. Okay, the end.
Yeah, and I even don't mind so much like everything falling into place perfectly, except that it was just ridiculous that like it wasn't explained to us. There was no setup for it. It just, ooh, this needs to happen. Boom, it's happening now. Like there was no prior setup to why some of these people were there, why this was happening. Like. One thing I said was, like, they happened to have the Alteans on the ship, so Crown was like, oh, we have to use them to keep the rift open because, they have Altean magic. Not all Alteans have Altean magic.
Yeah.
Like
he doesn't have it. And I'm like, could we have previously established that, like, part of them being pilots is because they have magic or something like that? Yeah. So this makes sense narratively as to why suddenly it just happens to fit that these few people that are here that were trying to kill us, we can now use for something good. Like, it just really felt like last minute, we don't have a solution within our own writing as to how to fix this. So we're just going to drop something in here that doesn't really make sense.
Well, and not to mention, I don't remember if it was in the last episode or was in this one, but there was the point where, I'm assuming it was actually probably either 1 or 2 ago, but there's the point where Nerva was like charging up the reality
breaker,
and there was that one person who did kind of go, oh man, this isn't right. I need to step up and do something. And she went to attack her and got blown up, and then showed up a couple of minutes later and was fighting again. And I was like, she blew her up. Like the robot blew up, and she's back again.
Yeah.
So was that supposed to be like time was getting weird, so she's back again, or did they forget that she had blown up and then drew her back in?
I need to watch that again. I feel like probably it was a different person, and we were supposed to see that like more Alteans were realizing that she was going bad. Yeah, I assume that's what it was.
Very similar.
They were
design.
both female pilots.
Yeah,
I know that much. But yeah, I made a note of that I do assume that it wasn't the same person and they didn't actually make that mistake, even though it felt that way to us. But what did I say? I think I just said that it was hard to keep track of the characters. They didn't put things out for us very clearly.
Mhm.
And that helped, that added to the confusion. We couldn't really keep track of who was who. Who's Shiro marrying again?
Hang on.
Yeah, so it is one of those things where just, they kind of were just pulling characters from
Curtis.
a bag.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That guy who doesn't get named on the show.
I need a character that vaguely fits this description. Oh, here's somebody that you don't remember existed, but I'm just going to throw them on screen for a second just to use them. Like, it was very much that.
Well, and the thing too is that way if they were trying to come across that more of the Altaians that were helping Minerva were like, oh man, shit's getting real weird here. Maybe this isn't what we thought it was. They should have incorporated different designs to make it very obvious, because as far as it looked to me, she was the same person.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you just got blown to smithereens. What are you doing? How'd you do it?
Welcome back.
Also, should have blown up another one of the freaking things instead of diving straight for her, you schmo.
Dingleberry?
God dang it.
Yeah.
The generators.
Yes.
There's a bit of logic in that episode where they were literally like, well, we just have to defeat her because they're gonna stop us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, plot, necessity, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You also could have your extra people, of which there are more, shoot the pyramids, but that's alright.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Going back to the more of the
So
sitting
coming
there.
back to the synapses and the brain time, the end of the show.
Yeah, we prepared for the last episode.
Lovingly named after a Smashing Pumpkins song. The end is the beginning.
Okay.
Where we start.
The first
Well,
thing
we
I
can-
the first thing I wrote down was something that Griffin started to talk about, was that I wrote for a negative thing for me was we seemed to not only be going through realities but also through time, since Lotor and the other Galra were so much younger in the reality that we enter than the reality that we were coming from.
Yeah.
And that was confusing because it was only stated to the audience that we're going through realities that are running at the same pace as us.
Yeah.
And yet we go into the past.
Mm-hmm.
So thoughts on that, anybody?
So,
Yeah.
okay.
Noodling.
By this point, if we hadn't
George
had,
Lucas is a noodle.
if we hadn't had so many like logic breaks earlier on in the season, this would have been jarring for me. But instead, it was just something where it was like, I'm sure other people in the room noticed this, but I'm beyond the point of like getting upset anymore. But yeah, to me, there was no established reason for it to have happened that way. It was, it pretty much was just so that Minerva could see Lotor as a child again.
Yeah, I mean, thinking it through, her stated goal is to return to her husband and child and to experience that, what she feels like she's robbed of due to just factors. So I guess she moved backward in time as well as through reality, but it is nowhere stated in this episode as to why that's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Lilo and I talked about this a little bit because we both, I know I definitely did expect when Allura was like, let me take you to meet your son.
Yeah, it's for him to be an adult.
I expected him to be an adult and for him and Allura to be together and for that to be the thing that broke Minerva, to see her, her son with the person that she's been running away from and despises the most.
And the reaction could have still been the same of, that's not my mother. My mother's been dead for ages. That is not. That's an old hag.
Right.
Yeah, like it could have been something he could just as easily repudiate her, but
right. But then that brings up what you were saying, Katie, and I understand from a writing standpoint that wasn't what she wanted. She didn't want her son, who was already grown up, to love her. She could have worked on that more in the current reality instead of the 0.5% effort she gave of, hey, I'm your mom, and him being like, I don't like you, and her being like, well, okay, I guess I'll just tear through reality and find out that does like me.
I'll blow up everything.
Instead of actually trying to give him a reason to trust her and like her again.
Yeah.
So she did need to have him when he was a child because that was what she wanted, was the time where she was raising him and creating a family together. But I made a note of, if she can go through time, why didn't she just go back in time in our own timeline and just fix things?
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
there was speculation before this season came out, when the trailer came out and she said she was going to fix things, that's what was going to happen, was she was going to go back in time, and it was the Paladins trying to stop her because she was going to undo everything that had happened, which could have a negative effect
Yeah,
on
then we get
them.
time.
timeline
yeah.
paradox and
Right.
like whatever.
And I was real excited for that. I was like, oh, but she's not necessarily a bad guy now because she's trying to stop the entity possibly, and like herself and her husband becoming corrupt and destroying all of this. And maybe she'll actually become the good guy, and Voltron will like team up with her, or find a way to talk her down, but to she won't be this bad person anymore, and it will be an interesting change, and we'll have a different villain, which we didn't get. But yeah, it was weird how they were like, yeah, she can also go back in time, but only because we want to see him as a baby.
Yeah.
The wings.
Oh my god.
Battleship ass.
Well, and it wasn't even. It was just like another ship on his back.
Yeah, it looked like the episode of SpongeBob where they're doing the fry cook games, and
Do you guys want to explain what I meant when I said the wings before we just start talking
yeah,
about it?
I would honestly hope that anybody who has seen this and is listening to us now knows that we are talking about the goofy, oversized upon oversized mega angel wings that came out.
Yeah, it was. The thing was, is they didn't even look like wings. It was just a ship. It was just a giant ship that just appeared
like-
with rods that
and
went
was
in every
connected.
direction.
Yeah,
It was like the size of the moon.
it looked like if a 1-year-old child was carrying a hiking backpack with thrusters on it.
yeah, and just dangling from it. Because it even shows a shot later, and he's like barely the size of your freaking
Looks like a
pinky
freaking-
finger,
looks like a
and
freaking
you're like,
swollen
what?
tick.
Yeah. So I'm like, what part's Voltron now?
It's like a giant tick that just fed off of whatever for a week straight.
Yeah.
Was ready to goddamn pop.
All I can think of is that Voltron wanted to be like one of those like classic video game bosses that takes up like 5 screens.
Yeah. Freaking mother brain ass motherfucker. God damn it.
Do we know where those even came from?
No!
Yeah,
The power of friendship.
Yeah.
Like,
They came from a, hey man, we need a way out of here.
it was like the
We need-
Black Lion, I think. I don't know. Like Allura was like, "Brrr!" And then I don't know.
Funny how they can put that shit in there, but they can't put an alternative to the resolution of the series.
Okay,
Major
yeah.
character death.
Ugh. Oh god, we have to talk about that too.
Yeah, we do.
All right, let's just skirt around it a little longer. There's got to be other content.
Well,
this
here's
episode.
well, and the thing is too is like why even go through the effort of making a, hey, we're gonna get together and then just be like, all right, well, she's dead.
I have to
So
go
it's
die
more
now.
emotional.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the wings is really just a weird aesthetic thing.
Yeah.
Whatever. I don't really have a huge issue with it. It was just weird looking.
it's so big.
But
I guess if they were trying to be like, well, it would take that much power to fly the big Voltron. I'm like, yeah, but we don't have to be real. It's
Atlas's
a show.
wings. Like what?
It's a show. We're in a show. Like we don't have to be exact. It's not like it's not like, hey, these wouldn't actually propel him forward.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck. It just looked like you were just like, let's draw a big dumb thing on top of it.
Did you know it should be physically impossible for bees to fly?
oh my gosh.
Oh.
So
yeah.
the other thing I typed was, where exactly were they when they were speaking to Honerva?
Oh my god.
Like when they finally,
They were in the center of the
there
universe.
was like one
because-
timeline left, and then she was there, and then they had giant wings, and then they flew into
You know
the
what it
middle of the
was?
timelines, and then they met her. I didn't really.
No,
They're
it
like
was
the middle of a Photoshop canvas, and they start flying towards the edge of the canvas, and they're like, "Okay, what happens now?" And they pop up in a different document.
They are at the beginning of time before the Big Bang. That is my
We're gonna say Ash-
speculation.
Yeah, well, it was just kind of one of those things where you know, when it had the wings, it's like it almost seemed like they just kind of destroyed everything in that moment.
The biggest part.
Yeah, just blew it up.
Oh, was that in the timeline void?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The biggest fart, or
The crow.
Yes, the wings were in the void.
The great-
and it
the
propelled
great
them
ribbit.
to, like, I think the center of
Yeah.
the void.
Yeah.
Yes, it was towards the center of the void where all the timelines were emanating from.
Okay.
Thanks for jogging
Okay.
my memory. It was
Yeah.
getting a little slogged down by
Well,
this point.
the
Yeah.
only part that they showed was just Voltron fucking like kickball shoving Minerva into whiteness, and that was it.
That was
And
it.
then I
We
was
don't
like,
know.
"Eh."
We don't know where they
Did
went.
they reach the edge of the map?
yeah,
They fell off.
They fell off the map.
the loading isn't working over here.
This is where we part ways. Hunk should have just been like, okay, yeah, but sure, but where is this?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or-
sure, we can part ways.
God,
Where?
No clips through the wall. Like
This is where we part ways.
No
Yeah.
clip through
I
the
mean,
Okay.
my
I guess it's
God.
not that important. We just need to know that they're in some
Yeah.
weird spiritual place.
they're in
where-
Harry Potter land where Harry and Dumbledore
Well-
are talking to each other. Like, I don't know, man.
And then the thing is, what about that you did was like what? Like it didn't explain why she had to, like because she only had the power to make everything all right again. That she had to go in and
Because
die.
man pain.
Yeah.
The Altean magic that she and her and Minerva were going to do to restore all the timelines, they knew that their lives would be the reagent for that magic. Like Minerva is like, you know what that means, don't you?
I feel like what they could have done instead of killing off Allura, was using Voltron's energy.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
true.
they would just get pinged back to wherever.
yeah.
Because if they can Deus Ex Machina a bunch of other bullshit into there, they can do that.
Yeah.
I swear to God, without
Yeah.
having to kill off a major character.
Yeah.
Is there literally any reason to have killed her off besides dramatic tension?
None.
No.
No, it
None.
was for tension.
And it could
Yeah,
have been
and if
any of
they-
the other pilots either.
I would have felt tension if it was Voltron, and we wouldn't have had to kill off
Yeah.
an intensely important
And
character.
then it could have
Yeah.
been like, how are we going to get home if we don't have Voltron? And then the Atlas... Voltron could have
and
disconnected from the
Shiro could have
Atlas.
saved everybody.
Whoa!
See,
All
that
the
would
kids
have
are
been
like,
sick.
let's kill ourselves. And Shiro's like, you freaking
No.
dumb kids,
God,
come
you
over
idiots.
here.
Yeah.
Get on the ship. We're
Yeah.
going home.
We're going to Disneyland.
And it would be cool too, because even there was even the point where I think it was Laura said that they don't need Voltron anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so I'm
because
like,
they asked
okay,
the question,
well,
how are we going to farm Voltron? You don't need Voltron anymore.
yeah. So then just send them in there.
Yeah, and Voltron
Be like
is chock
Voltron,
full of
get your ass
Altean
in there.
magic.
Yeah.
It's fucking made of it.
Take
Pull a
one-
gun and wing. Launch that
Yeah.
shit into the sun.
Made of it.
And like,
take one for the team, man.
I do remember them saying that the Atlas couldn't go with Voltron into the wherever because
It wasn't made of meteor.
Wasn't Altean or
yeah,
whatever.
it wasn't made of the same stuff.
It didn't have the comet. It didn't have the
Right.
ability to go through realities, which is something Voltron has, which is why
But-
Voltron and Lotor were both able to go to that weird
But
space.
what
Right.
if Voltron and the Atlas separated in that weird neuron void? Would they have been able to like find their old reality with the Atlas and rejoin it
I don't
without
know.
Voltron?
I don't even know if they needed Voltron to get back at that point. That wasn't really established. Like
Right.
how they got back to their timeline. It just seemed like all the timelines were restored and they were just put back where they were. Like they woke
Yeah,
up.
the next
Right.
thing we saw
They
was,
woke
is
up-
this? And Pidgeon's
They woke up
Yeah,
in
and
their
goes, yeah.
lions, and Allura was not in her lion, and they're like,
Right.
it worked.
What worked?
And then
Yeah,
not only
it
did
worked.
it work, but they fixed
Everything.
everything.
yeah, Altea came back. Dibazal came back.
Dibazar?
Dibazal.
Which the weird thing about that was it pre-destruction?
Ouch.
Did
or
they move
is it
in time?
did they merge something together where there was an after?
They stole it from
Altea.
another alternate reality.
Yeah, 'cause if
and they
you-
just killed all the people that lived there
Yeah.
and put it in the timeline.
Did they generate with populaces, or were they just empty planets?
Yeah, so it's just weird that they just
Yeah.
magically everything came back. That didn't have to happen. It could have just been like, well, shit. All right, let's just
War is
be
rough.
cool.
Let's stop
Yeah,
killing each other.
yeah.
Yeah, I did write down, going back a little bit in this episode, when Allura was talking to Honerva, and I have a few things about that. I thought that Honerva changed her opinion way too quickly.
Yeah.
Because up until now, she was like dead set,
No,
like, I
yeah.
will kill the whole universe. I don't care. I
I
know
will
what
burn
I've
you
done.
all down
I know
by
what my
atoms.
husband's done. I know what everyone's done. I've made this decision. And the person that she has shown through the last couple of episodes to loathe the most shows up and is like, hey, by the way, remember these memories that we as an audience saw just a little bit ago? I'm going to replay these for you and want you to rethink your life. And she's like, you know what? You're right. I was a bad person.
Yeah, she just magically learns the entire concept of empathy in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
It was really, it was like, wow, you're right. I was bad. I should fix this. And it's like, she had no motive there. And from a writer's standpoint, that was just, it was very
That was an
sloppy
ass pull.
writing.
Did you know other people have like their own perspective that they view the world from?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Wow.
Yeah.
So I talked to Lolo about this a little bit, but I felt they could have still played that out the same way, but instead of having Allura do it, have Lotor show up and have him talk to her.
That
Because he
would have
sh-
worked.
Because he shows up after she's like, yeah, I'm going to sacrifice myself. And we see him smiling and like hugging her and pulling him in. So we see that he's forgiven her after she makes that choice. But we could have had him appear before she makes that choice when she's still crazy and like immediately have him show up and say, mother, and have a pace where we pause and have us soak that in as an audience where he's accepting her as his mother and then telling her like, I understand. I made the same mistakes that you did. I walked down this path. It's not right, and it only leads to destruction, and it will never get you what you want. It never got me what I wanted.
Yeah.
We need to walk down this other path. You
I
need
would
to
have
listen.
shed a tear.
Right. And,
Like-
and I feel like for their characters, that would have made her stop. She would have
Absolutely.
listened to Lotor.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have made sense. And we still could have had the exact same plot points hit. I mean, we still, if they didn't need to kill Allura, but if they were like dead set on doing that, haha. You know, Allura, they could have been like, but we need to find a way to fix the timelines. And she could have been like, you know, I've been there through all of this. I know what I need to do. I'm willing to do this for you guys. And it would have been more meaningful even, I think.
Yeah.
So I feel like they dropped the ball there. I did write, so also when Allura was talking to Honerva, when she's showing her the memories, the first thing she says to her is, there was a time when you loved more than just family. And it's because Honerva's whole drive has been Lotor and seeing all this. And she's trying to remind her there's, you know, you cared about much more than just them. But I felt like that was really kind of crushing our theme throughout the entire show about found family and relationships. Like the whole show seemed to be based on that. And it was like, you need to let go of family and remember that you liked science. Like, 'cause that's what it's like showing her in school. And she was studying stuff like before she met Zarkon, she wanted to be a scientist and an alchemist. And it's like, you liked this stuff too, remember that? And she's like, oh, I did like that stuff. I shouldn't kill people. It's like, this doesn't make any sense.
Oh yeah, I had hobbies.
It does show like one still shot of her memories where she's helping the like the peoples on that kind of acidic planet. It does show her with I forget what their name, but it does show her like working with people to help them.
Yeah.
Did Rosie ever come inside?
No.
He just wants to go out.
Oh, that's true.
Okay. Lance's markings.
Yeah.
Somebody on the writing team read an Altean Lance fan fiction and was like, that's cool.
Yeah.
I have nothing to contribute to this idea besides confused Tim Allen noises. Thank you. Thank you. Now I don't have to.
I mean, he looks very pretty.
He looks lovely, but I literally do not understand why.
There is a popular, like, fan thing where people will draw Lance as an Altean.
Cool,
And that's
great.
been popular for a long time, and I feel like that's the only, like, they were just like, oh, a lot of fans like this they wanted to see him as an Altean. They thought that was a cool idea.
Mhm.
Let's throw it into the show, but it doesn't have anything to do with anything.
I mean, I can pull it out and be like, it's a physical manifestation of the affection of a magical being passed on so that he will remember her and not be sad. But did any of that get choreographed by the show? Heck no. Techno. So that's a headcanon.
It was stupid, is what it was.
It made no sense. And also, I felt like if they really wanted to kill her that badly, which I'm okay with her dying, it just wasn't done very well, honestly.
No, and it didn't really make sense. There's not a reason why that character needed to be dead.
She's the type of character that would sacrifice herself for the universe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the way that they did it, why? Why does she need to do this?
Her character arc was not done.
It's not explained to us at all. It's just whenever, you know what you need to do? Yes. And we're like, okay, she has to die, but what exactly, why does it have to be Allura? Yeah, again, why can't it be Voltron? Or and I feel like Lance would have been like, you know, I told you, the first episode we see of the season is him saying, you know, I love you. I want to be your family on Earth or wherever you want to go. I want to be with you. I feel like after he got the markings, because if it's I'm doing it because I'm Altean and only Alteans can do it, he'd be like, look, you bestowed this upon me as well. Let me go with you. I would rather go, let's go together. I will give you all of my life energy as well. Wherever you go, I am going to follow. I've made that commitment to you, and I'm ready to say goodbye to the other paladins as much as I will miss them.
Sorry.
And that would have been way more meaningful as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of other things they could have done. And Cran never got to say goodbye to Allura.
Nope. Cran got fucked. Cran got straight fucked.
And, we as an audience never even got to see him really until 1 year later when he was like, oh, it's the Remembrance Day for Allura. We never really got to see him acknowledge and grieve her passing.
Yeah. Well, especially because such a big part of his character was watching after Allura. It's like his specific purpose.
Yeah.
And there wasn't that closure there.
Yeah.
As far as just the whole goodbye, mourning and all that.
And
stuff.
it's not like they dropped the ball with that from the word go with this season. When he learns that Allura takes that entity into herself, immediately you see the weight of that action on his face and in his tone and what he says.
Yeah, he's like, I'm supposed to protect you. I failed.
I failed your father.
Yeah.
By allowing this to happen. I can't believe this. So it's not like there was an emotional disconnect there like in a lot of other places this season. Right. But it was awkward not getting to see that kind of close up for that character.
Yeah, even the Paladins' goodbyes, other than Shido and Lance, I felt like it was very much just like, I have to do this. And instead of, no, let's think of another way, it was just like, I'm sad, but goodbye.
Well, goodbye.
I'm sad, but,
Bullshit.
I'll remember you. I feel like they would have been like, excuse me? What the hell?
Yeah,
no.
Well,
why do you have to do this? What can we do? Let's think about it. We have infinity time. We're just floating in endless space right now.
Yeah.
There's no rush.
Well, and that goes along the same lines of earlier when she was having that brain meld session with Zarkon. How nobody stepped forward and was like, "Hey, that's messed up." They just or said anything about it. It's the same way. It's like they were just like, "Oh, okay."
Cardboard cutout-itis.
Yeah.
The only other thing I wrote for the last episode was Shido found his happiness. What?
The tease
Or
hat.
I just liked the 80s slideshow ending. Where
that
it
was
just
really quickly thrown together.
Yeah,
Because-
where it's just yes, let's just sum up everything really quickly because we can't add it in here.
Yeah, because the ending they had wasn't enough, and all the slideshows were so fucking stupid and out of character. Except Hunk was fine.
Yeah.
Lance was fine. But Keith...
Lance, a little bit.
Yeah.
He just goes and lives on a farm.
Keith, I kind of understand.
I was happy with Keith's. I'm just upset that Keith and Shido just seem to be completely disconnected from each other now. other than in a professional manner. Like any interactions with them is just like Voltron's doing this, Atlas is doing this, and even in the before epilogue that we get where they meet at the table, it's just like them saying what they're doing and him just being like, yeah, well, the Galra, and Daibazal were doing this thing, and
yeah. I like Curtis. I ship Shiro with a lot of people, but I think a much more effective ending would have been, instead of Shiro just he finds his happiness and leaves the battle behind. Instead of that, it would have been Keith is doing Blade of Marmora crap and whatnot, and then on another side it was, and Shiro's helping him from the Atlas. Like, Shiro's representation as a gay man still would have been valid because he's a gay man.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's fine. He's not going to stop.
Yeah, and him being in a relationship with somebody isn't like how he's defined as a person. I think that they were mistaken in what gay representation is supposed to be about, and what queer representation is.
And then I feel like maybe also part of that might have been because once the fans found out that there was that gay representation, that they were like, oh, well, he's not gay enough.
Exactly.
And so then they're like, shit, we got to make him do something real gay. Marry him to a dude.
Yeah.
Pick that one over there.
And I think you're exactly right, because a lot of it was, sure, he's gay, but when are we going to see that gayness on screen? It's not enough that you say it, but we did see that he's queer because he was in a relationship with Adam.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the thing is, too, is what people... Because gay people just do regular stuff.
Yeah.
Just because he is now...
Because gay people are people.
Yeah.
Weird.
So he doesn't have to be just like... He doesn't have to magically do stereotypical gay things.
I was going to gay lunch, and I parked my car in a very gay fashion.
I mean, that's valid. But I think it would have been much more effective if Shiro and Keith had been illustrated as, like, hey, they'd go to the stars with each other and for each other. So Shiro's going to be helping Keith by... If it had been Shiro's giving up his garrison position in order to help Keith in his efforts, that would have been fine. Because then Shiro gets to do what he does, what he left his boyfriend for was to be in space. That was literally like, Adam gave him an ultimatum of, if you go on that mission to Kerberos, I'm not going to be here when you get back. And he was like, bye. So he clearly loves space a lot. But then when it's like, also, it has to be said, the words Shiro leaves the battle behind doesn't necessarily mean that he's giving up his position at the garrison. It just means that he's no longer going to be in combat. So he could still be a researcher. He could still be doing what he wanted to do this whole time and do intergalactic study.
Right. Which is what the Kerberos mission was.
Yeah. He doesn't have to be in battle.
Yeah, his heart's already in study.
Yeah.
Yes, but it was very poorly worded, and it does leave it open-ended, and he left the battlefield behind. This could mean...
To go get married?
He's right, because they said he found his happiness, he leaves the battlefield behind. That you could say, he found his happiness, he's reaching for the stars with his love, or whatever, that's super cheesy, but, they could have worded it in a way that's not, he's leaving everything behind.
Yeah.
It's that he's moving forward in a direction he wants to go.
Yeah. Forget all of these relations, all of this history that I share with all these people, deuces I'm out to go and canoodle.
Yeah.
Right.
It felt odd.
But really, for me, the core of it isn't, well, they could have worded it differently, or they could have had a little more time with Curtis. We could tiptoe around the things they could have done to make the blow a little bit softer, but it still would have been a blow, for me anyway. So as somebody who's queer, what bothers me the most with how they handled this is that it 100% felt like an afterthought.
Yeah.
And I don't want my identity to just be an afterthought in somebody's story.
It's a postscript.
Can I put on my tinfoil hat and share an idea real quick?
Yes. Do it.
On the note of that feeling like an afterthought, I know that the content creators are not blind to the fandom, and this was a very loud fandom. Particularly, there was a shipping war between two very, very loud groups.
Yes.
Perhaps, and this is where I'm wearing my hat now.
I think I'm wearing the same hat.
Perhaps
Same
they
hat?
saw a very toxic community. They saw very two large tags. You both know who you are. And they thought, well, if Shiro ends up in an end credits like 80s slideshow getting married to one of these two, the other side's going to be very angry. How about we don't, we just avoid that whole scenario.
And in that regard, I am happy that they didn't get Shiro with any of like the other people. Because if Shiro and Keith had gotten together, I think it not only was it not their endgame? I don't think it was. I think that their relationship was solid as it was without romance.
Yeah.
Romance, I think, I infer romance because I have shipping goggles on. But I am happy that they didn't put him with Keith or anybody like from the Paladin group, because it just would have been messy. PTSD's a thing. But if they had just developed the person that he got with more, it would have been fine.
That would have been more
And that kind of
impactful emotionally.
follows on Anne's thought of that's where I had something to talk about, and that's why I wanted to watch the end of this show, is that there was a big hype made about the fact that there was specifically male homosexual representation. It's been a big year in terms of just queer rep in general. Steven Universe has been a thing. There's been some other stuff out and about that we would not have seen when I was a young child. But it feels very cheap to say, make a big deal, like a big marketing deal. Still on Netflix, if you look at the show's title cards, there's rainbows over Shiro's head.
Yep.
That is not made implicit anywhere in the text, other than just literally about 10 seconds of BT dubs. I was dating a man once, now he's dead.
Yep.
It's, don't make it a point of pride or a point of saying, look at what we did! We did this thing! And then don't. And I think that's been the source of frustration for some of the fandom that I've seen. I think Shiro is an excellent character. I think he's excellently written. Like, I have no problems. I have no problems with him as a character. And I'm not saying that he has to prance around or be stereotypical or even has to date anybody to continue to be queer. But if you were going to include his romance and sexuality in the story, then let it be within the story.
Especially if it's a selling point for your product.
Yep.
Yeah.
And not literally for 3 seconds at the very end of the show.
Yeah. Which the scene itself is very
It's beautiful.
progressive.
Sure, yeah.
However, for people who are fans of the show, it's just they did exactly what they said they weren't going to do, which is pair him off with some rando.
Yeah.
Bridge dude number 3,
Yeah.
whose name we only hear because it's in the sub. Well, we don't even hear it.
We don't even hear it.
Yeah,
He's not a named character.
And he's called Adam in the end slide for the
Yeah, well,
Or
that
the
was
the
side-
narrator.
Yeah.
that was just a slip up on their part. though.
Which I think is indicative of how rushed that ending was.
Yeah, that's true.
It was an afterthought for sure.
I have also seen like a side-by-side comparison of the two characters. They have very similar facial structure.
And I'm sorry, you were saying, like, in terms of representation, you don't want to be a side note. Did you have further thoughts that you wanted to expand on?
Well, I think part of what happened was because we talked about, shipping wars, and obviously, well, I think it's fairly obviously that did tinfoil hat on or off. That did fuel a lot of the decisions, I think, with some of season 8 and how the dynamics between characters suddenly shifted so dramatically and drastically. I think that was in response to harassment, unfortunately. And I think it was handled very poorly. And I feel like, instead of just continuing things the way they were going, but not necessarily, you don't have to put anybody together. I never thought my ship would get together, and they didn't need to get together. But things still needed to feel like it was the same characters. But also, I think from season 7, when they did introduce Adam and then he was killed off very quickly, there was a large backlash of, this is bury your gays, which I didn't feel it was personally, because he wasn't a character we cared about. He was just
A soldier.
some random person that died, and this was just to establish that the character that we have had for 6+ seasons is gay.
That's why we got the ex-boyfriend in a flashback.
Right, and it could have been handled better in that, I didn't realize that was Adam being killed until they were, like, making a big deal out of it, and I was like, oh, that was Adam. Oh, okay, so it was rushed through, and so there was a lot of criticism of, it's not actually representation. I didn't necessarily feel that way. I felt it was sloppy and it could have been done better, but I was glad it was done. I didn't feel like they should have never done it at all. Because I felt like it was just to establish that Shiro is gay, and he doesn't need to be dating anybody at this point in time to be gay. And there is loss in war, and we're establishing that now. And this is one of the ways, and that could have been handled better, arguably. But I think because of that heavy backlash of you can't just say he's gay and then kill his ex-boyfriend that he wasn't even with anymore anyway, so it doesn't really matter because they weren't in a relationship anymore. The only way you can actually have it be representation and have him be gay is if we see him with a man. And I feel like that's what they heard from the backlash was, we did a bad job, not because of not actually fleshing out this other character that we said was going to be important, and then we just had him flash by for 3 seconds. It's what they took, I think, from that was, oh, you want to see him be with somebody if you want gay rep. Okay, we're going to make the exact same mistake we did in that we're just going to throw him with somebody that we haven't developed, that you know nothing about except for a couple of scenes. And we're going to make it even worse because they're not going to really talk to each other that much, aside from a few commands and a few yes sirs. And look, at the end, they kissed, they're in love, and they got married. So you got what you wanted, right? Like, I feel like they took all the worst parts of that criticism and listened to them and the good parts of the criticism and ignored it.
A little bit.
But I don't know. That could also be just me.
No,
My feelings on it.
I definitely share your sentiment there. Matter of fact, I remember having basically an almost word for word conversation with you about this. Where it was representation. I don't understand the discourse online that it's not representation if he's not in an active relationship. I think drawing attention to a flashback that literally sets up his sexuality. I understand that issue is going to be perceived differently by different individuals, and those are my specific thoughts about it. But I still feel that it's unfair to attack the creators for it. It would be more fair honestly, in the best timeline, the writers would have paid more careful attention to the content that we were creating. And in a more perfect world, we wouldn't have jumped on them like that.
And we have to understand, too, that they are working within constraints.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that they decided to write shitty rep. There is X amount of things that one can get away with, and then there's a lot that one cannot.
Yeah.
And I don't understand those constraints. I don't know what the studio people will and won't let go.
Yeah.
So, am I saying it was great? No, I'm not. But am I angry at the writers purely about that? No, I'm not. They did, I think, the best that they could. And did they do it perfectly? No. But do they need to be attacked and harassed? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, I don't think, I can't even say I don't think. I know for a fact nobody here encourages harassment of any kind. That's not productive.
Yeah.
No, you should never, ever harass somebody, even if they had done it in a horrible manner.
Yeah, even if they were like, fuck all these people.
Then you just leave. You just don't support them anymore.
Yeah.
That's what you do. And I would rather they tried in good faith to do something and they messed up than they were actively trying to harm.
Yeah.
Something like that. And I think they did try to do things well. Again, I just feel like they listened to the wrong criticism because people were really loud about some of the wrong things, in my opinion. I think what they tried to do with Adam was fine. I just think they didn't do it with as much grace as they could have. But yeah. Any other thoughts on Voltron?
We can wax poetic about some of that, but that I think covers a lot of what happened in the season. Like from the writing perspective, just based on the show and not some of the ancillary stuff that went along with it. I've kind of set my piece there.
Mm-hmm.
I think to put the season in a nutshell for me is that it did wrap up a few things that I was actively hoping to see wrapped up. Zethrid taking Keith hostage is going to be my favorite shot visually from the season. Just one more shout out for how good that scene looked.
Yeah.
And I'm going to sit on the disappointed covered wagon and ride the frontier of I don't care anymore.
Yep.
I think my takeaway is that we need to support more queer creators and put more queer creators into higher positions of power within the creative hierarchy of shows like this, because clearly the way it was handled was not right by marketing and the production team. And I think that we can do better.
Definitely.
Agreed.
That being said, I fucking love Voltron. I will always love Voltron. And I love all the fix-it-fix out there.
Yes.
And I love shipping everybody together.
Let them all kiss.
Shiro and Curtis, Shiro and Adam. Shiro has 2 hands.
yes, he does.
He can hold 2 people's hands. So, anyway.
She got thoughts?
Yeah. And I mean, it was enjoyable. I mean, besides the fact that everything just felt really, really rushed, like they were really trying to just end it. But I mean, it was still fun. It's still good, and yeah, it was good. It was good.
Katie?
I think overall I'm glad that I gave it a watch. It was interesting learning both the successes and failures of the pacing. For all of the garbage that I had to say, a lot of that show was really beautifully done. The animation was clean and tight in a lot of places. It was just visually really beautiful. I liked the character designs. It's a good show. I can see why people love it. I think that's why the disappointment is as much as it is when you see something that shines really bright in some areas. You want it to do better in others. Would I go back and watch the rest of the show to catch up with what just happened? No, probably not. But
that's because Fruits Basket's coming out.
It is!
Hey.
That'll be for another day.
Yeah, that'll be another day. But no, I had a great time, and thank you for listening to our thoughts.
Yeah.
And then Uncle here. I pretty much agree with everything everybody said. I still love Voltron. I'm not leaving the show or the fandom just because I was disappointed with how the ending was handled. It was a big mess. But, I can clean it up with headcanons, and I can read fic, and I can create my own content and be inspired by it. And overall, it's still, it was a good story. It had wonderful characters, and it was fun.
Yep.
It was fun.
It was enjoyable.
I had a really good time
Absolutely,
watching it.
And I can't wait to see what's coming up next from the creators. And
Studio Mirror's cooking up some stuff.
Yeah.
So.
And yes, from definitely support indie creators and queer creators. That's how you're going to see the content that you want, is by, supporting those small names that are trying to get it out there.
Put your dollars to the stuff you want to see.
Yeah,
Even if it's imperfect, it only gets better with time.
Yep.
Yeah, and be kind and forgiving of people. It's okay to critique people. It's not okay to harass people. Know the difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, nothing but love for the fandom and everybody out there.
Don't drink and drive. Don't text and drive.
Please
Don't
tip your
smoke weed
waiters.
and
Are you
drive.
about to hang up?
Kids,
If
Kids
anybody
don't do
has last
drugs.
minute thoughts, I was going to wrap it up a little bit.
Yeah. Remember when I mentioned my joke ship?
Yes.
Start to move your finger towards hang up, and I swear to God, I'll mention it before you do. So Coran and oh shoot, I forgot her.
Hang on.
Crolia and Coran get a couple of really good scenes together. Bye.